across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk with the Home of Common Sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's fast approaching 3 minutes past 10 o'clock on this Monday morning. Now, a lot of you might be at work today. A lot of you might still be, working from home. We've talked about that. Or you may indeed be enjoying your Easter holidays. Perhaps sneaked away from the kids. Just sneaked away a little bit of common sense here from Auntie Julia. Well, we're here to give you your company there. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio, whether you're on your smart speaker, whether you're on YouTube or your connected device, very much appreciate you taking the time to join us. Don't forget, if you miss anything from the show, you can go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing benefit claimants getting a 6.2% rise in their handouts, while hard-working Brits are tightening their belts. 1 in 8 parents now claims that their child has a disability. Police are failing to solve, wait for it, 92% of burglaries in Britain last year. We've still got a third of coppers who haven't sold a single crime in a year. What on earth are they doing all day? Are they just sitting around twiddling their thumbs, picking their noses? What are they, I don't know, eating donuts? Is that what they do these days? I don't know. We're also going to be talking about another crime which obviously is very, very rarely solved, and that's phone theft. And Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, is demanding answers over what she calls Morgan Mcweny's extremely fishy phone theft. Got so much more to talk about, plenty more besides. All of the chat, I'd like to say today, over the next few hours, with the Conservative commentator Benedict Spence. Morning to you.
Good morning.
It's one of those sort of weird sort of parliamentary recess bitty days where there's a small matter of a war over in the Middle East, which is massively impacting and going to hugely, colossally impact our economy for probably the next year. But we're kind of just, although we're seeing, energy costs in terms of your heating bill at home have come down because of the part of GM price cap as of, well, they will as of April the 1st, right? So, in a day or so. But fuel costs at the pumps absolutely going up. Everyone can see that. Other costs beginning to rise. As we see the oil that has not got out of the Strait of Hormuz, which should have already got out over the last few months, working its way through the refineries, through the system, we are going to be seeing things getting a whole lot worse. Yeah. Things are going to get very tight indeed. Perhaps 1970s, if you're old enough like me to remember that period. Perhaps not as bad as 2022 under Ukraine. But things are getting very worrying. And the main thing we seem to have at the moment is Donald Trump does an interview overnight. We wake up every morning and he's done another interview and he's said something about, oh, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we'll seize the nuclear weapons, or the nuclear material, we're going to seize Carg Island, we're sending in troops, I may or may not, and we can take Iran's oil, it'll be easy to invade Carg Island where 90% of Iranian oil comes, and it's all very casual, and yet the rest of the world is reeling. We're looking at fertilizer shortages, meaning food shortages in third world countries, prices going up for us. Some of those countries, we're talking about massive regime destabilisation. And it's like the world is exploding around us, but in slow motion, isn't it?
Yeah, and one doesn't want to sound sort of too catastrophic or anything about it.
Yeah.
But guys, you don't know how bad it's going to get. Like, it's not got there yet. It's going to be a slow motion car crash. All of those prices, as you say, are going to rise. All of the goods, accordingly, are then going to be harder to get your hands on. There's probably going to be a stock market crash as well. So you got that sort of. It probably hits.
That's your pension.
Yeah. It honestly, and what's sort of quite exciting about all of this, in a way, to bring it back to domestic politics, is that you've got a government that doesn't seem, to understand that this is going to happen, doesn't really seem to understand what these things are in many ways, and is just sort of happy to just twiddle its thumbs, a bit like this. If you're watching on the screen, just do that. That's basically what it's doing. That's its economic policy. That's its
hope it all goes away.
And the major sort of opposition in this country, on the one hand, you've got Reform, who were kind of sat there for a very long time going, we're going to stop the votes, we're going to get down to migration, and is now probably going to have to think, oh, OK, there's a lot more that is going to fall into our lap if we get into power that we perhaps didn't anticipate. I know Nigel Farage was talking about how there might be a currency crisis in this country, but that's because it was based on borrowing, not on, Iran catching fire. And on the other hand, you've got the Green Party.
Hello.
And I don't think I need to say anything more about that. I just need to raise my eyebrows and go, have you seen their polling? That's terrifying. These are your options, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a really exciting 12 to 18 months.
Never say politics is boring. But genuinely, I can wake up in the morning and we'll talk with the production team. We will say, like, what do we think? What do we want to ask the question about today? What do we want to talk about? And I think people get bored with the Iran war. People go, oh, you know what? And you can't get bored with it, guys.
You might get bored with the Iran war. The Iran war is not going to get bored of you.
No, and that's the key thing. But then we've got, Donald Trump raised an idea of we've got 50,000 US troops basically there. You've got the Marines. These are the people whose job it is to basically seize territory. A lot of talk about seizing Iran's Cargo Island. Now, that would be a game changer. It's a very small island. Apparently, it's about a third of the size of Manhattan, if that helps at all, about 8 square miles. It's not big. Pretty well defended, though. And it's basically where 90% of Iran's oil comes out. Now, Iran is closing the Straits of Hormuz, deliberately select, we can still get our oil out. They're making a fortune out of selling their oil. They're selling the same amount as they were before, but they've destroyed some other oil facilities. They're not letting tankers go out of the Gulf, so they're doing well. If that was seized, then you're talking about a different sort of war. The trouble is, are the Iranian people in charge right now, are they more hardline than the old lunatics? We've just got a new set of lunatics. Is anyone actually in control? Are there talks going? We don't even know if there are talks going on. Iran keeps saying they're not. We know there are messages. What is Pakistan's involvement? This is not a player I trust. I'm so sorry. They're busy just getting out their own oil tankers. But we are in some very, very dangerous territory. And you're also in this situation where whatever Donald Trump says he can do, whatever the military might of America can do, if you're dealing with lunatics who are willing to take any beating whatsoever for ideological reasons, and you're in the situation where the American public are not willing to take, even more than a handful of US deaths of troops, you've got your hands tied behind your back.
Yeah, it's, listen, I'd love to be able to give people a sort of a vision of what's going to happen, but even I'm sort of sat here just going, there are so many different...
Even Benedict.
In terms of what's going on in Iran itself, nobody has a clue actually what's going on. There are a few things that we can say, and that is that the Americans and the Israelis have managed to degrade the Iranians' missile and drone capacity, but it's not zero. It's not zero. And all you need, if you're firing at troop formations, okay, that's one thing. If you're firing at oil fields, that's a very different system. You don't need to be anywhere near.
And the impact of that.
Yeah, you don't need to be anywhere near as accurate with your one missile with an oil field as you do with a troop formation. So nobody knows what the timeline is on any of this. And the thing is, even if the US does seize Cargo Island, all that will prompt is then the Iranians are in a even more difficult situation.
They're going to set the American troops on fire.
Yeah, that's what they say. Yeah, but this is what they will do. They will fire more and more at civilian infrastructure in the Gulf region. They'll fire more and more at all of those tankers currently sat off the Gulf. They don't care. As you said, they're religious fundamentalists. They believe in the idea of paradise. This sort of concept that the average sort of secular Westerner sort of sits there and goes, that sounds nuts. And they're just like, yeah, but we believe it.
But this is the weird thing. It's like, we constantly hear statements, whichever the government minister is on and with the media around, and it's during parliamentary recess, so where are you going to get them on the media around now? Is say, well, we're at the front of trying to de-escalate, and it's sort of. No, you're not. Yeah. You haven't got any powers in this region. What? You've got no influence whatsoever. It's one of the things I do find. Now, this is a terrible thing. So I'm sounding like a terrible human being, but you knew that already. But some 70 Britons arrested in Dubai over social media posts and war photos. Even receiving a photo in Dubai of a missile attack or bombing technically should get you 10 years behind bars. People aren't even going to be charged for months, but they can face a long time. People get there even if they're freed on bail, their passports are taken, and then they're unable to leave the country. Hey, you all thought you were living in this amazing country. 85% of people are sort of, from abroad, and you've all got all these freedoms, and it's so safe. You've been telling us how wonderfully safe it is. Oh, there are no street crimes. There's no rapes. It's all wonderful. It's a wonderful country. No, you've been living in a totalitarian state where you have no rights. There is no proper judicial system as we understand it. Well, great. You've not been paying any tax. I hope you've had a great time. Oh, and now you want our help? Now you want the British government to come in and help you, do you? Want the Foreign Office staff to come in and help you? Well, yeah, we're going to have to do that because you're British citizens. But maybe don't live in a totalitarian state and say how bloody wonderful it is and how safe it is when actually it's all conditional on you saying Sturm about the fact that your next door building was knocked down by a missile and that you're terrified for your life, because you're not allowed to say that because you don't live in a free country like Britain. And I know we're not perfect, and I know we've got government after government who are trying to stop our freedom of speech, but it's not as bad as the United Arab Emirates. So I'm so sorry if I have zero sympathy for Britons currently in Dubai discovering that it's Dubai and not London and you don't actually have any rights. Just saying, not much sympathy for you.
My attitude is, with all of these situations, you go to a country, you understand what the laws are of that country, you abide by them. That's the open and shut thing.
Or,
it's just how
or
it
leave.
Is.
Or,
well,
in my case, don't go there in the first place.
If you don't like those laws, then you don't go there.
Well,
or you don't fall foul of those laws.
By the way,
that's the trade-off for you not paying tax.
When it comes to Iran, the solution the British government's got, the Prime Minister today is hosting a summit at Number 10, these roundtable summits, and you just know nothing's going to come of it. Energy companies, shipping companies, logistics experts about what the impact on the economy would be. I mean, it's good that they're finally trying to learn what it is. I mean, you know...
Stop myself there going, so this economy you keep telling me about, how important is it?
Meanwhile, Rachel Reeves is meeting with a load of other sort of Treasury ministers from Europe and elsewhere, and apparently her message is going to be, well, you know what, we need to wean ourselves off these fossil fuels and get onto renewables. I mean, idiot. I wrote a piece of The Sun last week how the real Prime Minister is Ed Miliband. I mean, that's the thing, and it's true. It really is just... Net zero is controlling every aspect of our country right now. Now, Australia's the latest country to cut fuel duty, to cut prices at the pumps. And then they followed you, Spain, Ireland and a few others. We're told by the government again and again, they will not, at the next budget, they will not cut the fuel duty. They're going to keep it... That's a load of nonsense. It's going to be... They're going to have to, aren't they?
Yeah.
And most of the money was... When you go to the forecourt, most of the money you spend filling up your car is tax.
Yeah, I mean, well, we say that they're going to have to. We assume they're going to have to. But we also, at the same time, as we've just alluded to, we're not entirely sure that these people understand how economics work.
There is that point.
So there is every possibility that they, in fact, do not do this, and then they reap the whirlwind that comes from that. Listen, it's not going to be a short-term fix, drilling in the North Sea or for gas or anything like that. Any of the things that they could do, that is pretty much the only thing that they could do, is cutting fuel duty in the short term. I simply don't trust that they are going to do it ultimately. And I think that Ed Miliband, as you said, being the de facto Prime Minister, if we're being completely honest here, he has got so much support from within the party itself, from amongst the backbenchers. And this is an important thing to recognise, is that, this is one of, I'm afraid, the failings of our system, of our democratic system, is that we have now managed to get ourselves into a state where the rest of the country is being held hostage by the ideological frailties of 300-odd people, 200-odd people within the party, whatever it is you want to say it is. These people do not understand how the world works. They have an ideological framework of how they would like the world to work, and enough people have gone, well, you seem better than the other lot. Those people are now there. They're under the, their legs are under the table. They're not going anywhere. And the country will have to just stomach as much pain as possible until people
the Greens get elected.
Really understand. Well, that I'm afraid is the major fear, is that this country, as much as I like to think that the average British person is rational, is smart, very clearly they are not. 48% of them voted to remain in the EU, so obviously at least half of them. But still,
Jeremy
enough
Corbyn
of them
didn't get elected. Now, he came very close, and I think lots of people thought in 2017 it was a free vote, no chance, and then he got very close, and then Boris Johnson got that much bigger majority in 2019. I like to think the British public are sensible enough, but if they're not, well then fair enough. Then they will live with the consequence. Because the funny thing is, these are all the people who go, oh, well, we're going to tax the wealthy. It's like, you know what? The wealthy will be just fine. They'll all sod off. The middle classes will just about, survive. It's the poorest people. When the cake shrinks, it's the poorest people who suffer. I mean, my main issue with them is their abject anti-Semitism. But listen, I want to talk about, we'll come on to that later in the show. I also want to talk about this because I want to question, I'd love you to get in touch on any of the topics we're talking about. But police, this is a Sun exclusive. I mean, the thing is, I'm surprised by these figures being so good, hilariously. The police have failed to solve 92% of burglaries in Britain last year. In a third of the country, police didn't crack a single case. I don't know what they're doing all day. Less than 1% of phone thefts lead to a suspect being charged. I mean, or even in the case like my bag theft, someone was charged, but they've never actually managed to get them to come to court, and they're not. Well, they say they're looking for him. Rubbish, are they? But no, in the vast areas of England and Wales last year, no break-ins at all were solved. I mean, we're talking about. But we're told, well, they don't deal with minor crimes, so they're not doing, so shoplifting, they don't do shoplifting, they don't do phone theft, they don't do bike theft, they don't do burglaries. What are they doing?
Yeah. These are the basics that they should be doing. It's sort of the broken window theory, isn't it? Actually,
no. Broken window theory is literally a broken window or someone urinating in the street or dropping litter. Burglaries are serious crimes that massively affect people's lives.
But the point is, if you ignore the small stuff, it leads to the big stuff. And this is when it says 92% of burglaries. We're sat here going, so that means 8%. I'm telling you right now, those will have been big. Those will have been big series of arrests where they've broken in something and they found a lot of stuff all at once. And that's what I mean.
No. I'll tell you what it will be. It will be some of that, and some of it will be, can you please, right, so we've got you for this one. What other burglaries are you going to plead guilty to? And we'll lump them all into one. And then someone just says, I did 85 and I did 83. No, but that's no, they haven't got evidence for them. They just
it doesn't matter. But the point is, it's a very small number of people that they are pinning an awful lot relatively of the stuff on, and that's what I'm saying. It's all downstream of that. If you ignore the small stuff, and that's what I mean when I say the broken windows stuff. But I do think actually the broken windows thing is part of it, because a great swathes of this country, 100%. You see, the way in which people live, in which actually, it just fosters
bikes on pavements, littering, spitting in the street,
all that sort of thing.
All of that. You come down on that stuff really, really hard. Yeah. You stop a load of us, and as discovered in New York, that with the zero tolerance, the guy walking along who then urinates in the street, or the people with the broken tail, they've got a knife on them. They've got it's
the guy that jumps the tube barriers or something like that has probably got something on him, and it always tends to be the case.
I cost someone at least once a week about that, and I just shout thief at them, because I'm paying more for my train fare every morning because they don't pay. I'd love to hear from you on this. Police failing to solve 92% of burglaries in Britain last year. That is only 1 out of 12. 1 out of 12 burglaries is actually solved. I mean, and frankly, those were probably almost entirely where people themselves have produced the evidence. I mean, only reason my bag theft was, quote, solved, as in there was someone arrested and charged, but never actually appearing in court, was because I produced the evidence. What is your reaction to that? Only 1 in 12 burglaries in Britain actually being solved by the police. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can also send us a message on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost 1, standard network rate message. Talking of phone theft, though, I mean, they say 1 in 100 cases of phone theft are solved, so it's basically decriminalised, same as shoplifting. The Morgan Mcweeny, says Kemi Bade, not the Tory leader, Morgan Mcweeny has to explain what she calls his extremely fishy phone theft. We've had more information coming out over the weekend. This is about the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff, who, while he was Chief of Staff, one of the most powerful, important people in the country, at number 10, October the 20th last year, after Peter Mandelson had been sacked, and while there was lots of talk about there going to be some parliamentary demand to hand over all the messages about the decision to appoint Mandelson, in which Morgan Mcweeny was a key player in persuading the Prime Minister, it turns out, it was his office phone. Again, he gave the wrong street. He didn't say he was a member of the government. There's been no follow-up from number 10 about this theft, which is very bizarre. Turns out he's got 2 other private phones, 2 other personal phones, in this humble address, as it's called, where you've got MPs, including Labour MPs, voting for Parliament to basically have the right to scrutinise what the hell went on, all the private communications in number 10, the meetings, the emails, the WhatsApps, everything. Downing Street had to go through, basically, can everyone please give up the information? They have now, but haven't already, requested, not demanded, requested that Morgan Mcweeny reveals messages on his personal phone. Even the staff who were still there and Morgan Mcweeny, they're allowed to decide themselves whether they think it's relevant or not, as opposed to everything, and then we'll decide what's relevant. This is quite apart from anything. This is basically 2 fingers up to the House of Commons, who represent us.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not going away, this story. They seem to think that if you just sort of obfuscate and drag your heels and don't comply, that it will. But every couple of weeks, Peter Mandelson's mug is going to end up back on the front pages of the newspapers, because something else will come out and everyone will be reminded, oh yeah, that's a thing. This is going to run on and on for years, this story, because we're not setting the agenda in this country. It happens in the US, and there's no power that any sort of British politician has over any sort of media infrastructure there. And they keep on coming out. This is the slow poison that's going to do for Keir Starmer's credibility, because whatever else happens, every couple of weeks, the public is going to be reminded, oh yes, he made this man the ambassador to Washington, knowing what he did, or believing the nonsense that this man made, which is an incredible indictment of his judgment. And then, oh yeah, who was his chief of staff? Who was he friends with? Oh, right. And what happened to his phone? Oh, that's the thing. It's just going to keep on chipping away at the credibility. Why it is that they think that actually elongating it, dragging it out is going to make it any better?
Cleverer than
I know they think they're cleverer than us.
Really not.
But we've seen this sort of thing happen in British politics so often. The scandal starts, it starts small, you think we can write it out, it gets bigger, and they just think if you just ignore it long enough, everything will be fine. Listen, Sakir, the war has come and it's still not made things better. You know, you're not getting your Thatcher moment. It's not going to save you because you don't have any troops to deploy. You know, this is the issue. And somehow that's what's going to go. That's what's going to do for him. There's no escaping
Ironically, it's going to be that. 10:23 is time. Love to hear your thoughts on everything we're talking about. Covered a lot of ground there. In particular, I'd love to hear about this. I mean, police failing to solve 92% of burglaries. I mean, it's just 1 in 12 burglaries is solved. What the hell are the police doing if they're not actually investigating burglaries? I'm pretty sure that if I set my mind to it, I could if I'm a household burglar, I would be able to find out. You know, word on the street, go to the local pubs. I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. What are the police actually doing with their time? If you're a police officer, I would love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Message us on X at talkTV. But in particular, I'd love to hear your calls and your thoughts on all these roundtables and what we're going to do about the fuel prices and energy prices, the Iran war, you name it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of it. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:26 is the time. Let's get some of your messages coming in about this failure to solve 92% of burglaries in Britain. Vin says, why do we pay for their failure? I mean, maybe if they just spent a little less time wearing, rainbow lanyards and arresting people for hurty posts on X, then they could actually, investigate some, I don't know, crimes. Dan says, if you need the police to respond quickly, write something offensive about immigrants on social media, you'll have an armed response unit at your house within minutes. Ain't that true? Mark says, I bet the 8% that were solved were the houses of rich people. I remember a few years ago seeing police patrolling down my street, and I went up to the police officer and said, has someone important moved in the area? He said, why? I said, well, because I haven't seen a copper in for 5 years. So I assumed there was a reason for it, and it wasn't just, patrolling. Why would they bother with burglary, says John? They're far too busy policing tweets. Again, Owen says, I blame the Tories. They cut police funding and expected the same standard of service. I still think that the police could solve fewer crimes, but actually each of them does the same job. But if it is impossible for the police to be vaguely doing their job if in a third of places in England and Wales not a single burglary is solved. That is a police force simply not doing its job. I mean, I'm sorry, the full stop. There are not that many historic sex crimes they're looking into, if you're going to say. Embarrassing, says John. Nothing in Hollowed Out Britain works. Louis says they don't have the time. There are too many anti-establishment poses to go through. And Phil says, did the 8% hand themselves in? They probably did. They just wanted a hot meal for the night, didn't they? Let's go into other subjects. Daniel's in Epsom. Now, Daniel, you want to talk about the Green Party, don't you, which we just touched on there with Benedict. And the Green Party have had their spring conference. It was online. Zach Polanski, the Green Party leader, was busy dancing at it was a pretending to be against the hate march, but as always, it's just an anti-Semitic march, isn't it? But Daniel, what do you want to say?
Well, what I want to say is, to most ordinary British people, the Green Party are just a really unfunny joke that's gone too far. But you have to kind of put it in... Let me tell you a story. My nan and granddad got married in the 50s, and they went to the council and they were given a house, right, about a week later, which they subsequently bought. My mum and dad were able to buy a house and have a family, and I'm 49, so I was able... And over the generations, it's got progressively harder to do that, right? So now the social contract's completely broken for a lot of young people. You can't meet a girl, settle down, buy a house like you used to be able to. And that's why parties like the Green Party, which to most of us, right, it's laughable, right? But they're appealing to the upper middle class sort of uni grad types for some reason.
Who feel they've been hard done by,
Yeah, and then plus the Islamists. I mean, blimey, if you'd have seen that, did you notice that at the Green event in London, when they had the LGBTQ stand and they were all dancing to like techno music, there was not one Islamist Green in the crowd.
No, they've got these two completely different audiences. No, I completely agree with you. I understand why young people would say, well, this isn't fair. And again, that's why they're turning, to the left. In fact, it's interesting, girls are turning more to the left and boys often turning to the right, turning to reform. But a lot of them turn to the left because it's that whole, it's the wealthy. It's like, when we see these signs at this march, it's not, what is it? It's the danger isn't coming on dinghies from the Channel. It's coming in private jets. No, the wealthy aren't dangerous to us. But yeah, I'm happy. I want people to be taxed at a reasonable rate, and I don't want people to escape their taxes. But the idea that that's going to solve everything is absurd. This idea that everyone who's rich has basically stolen it off people who are poor is a load of nonsense.
Yeah, well, I've got a 20 grand tax bill. I'm waiting to pay now. I'll have to pay it any day now.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a lot of money to pay.
Yep.
But the reality is that it's like a naivety. It's like an idealism. It's like a mind virus. It's a way of thinking. I mean, look, if you look at the news every day, okay, trying to say that we should be more scared of the billionaires rather than the illegals turning up on boats. Yeah. Every single day I open the news. Like today, an Indian man, for some reason, is driven into a load of...
Okay, now I need to stop you there because the man has been arrested, he's not been charged, and then it would be sub judice. So just for legal reasons, a man has been arrested.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, but the point I'm making is that there's a trend. The victims always seem to be native British, and the attackers are from somewhere else generally, right? And whether people like that or not, that is just a fact. We
certainly have there are certainly, I mean, in fact, I don't think Indians come into that category, actually. They go, this is a suspect. But we certainly have an issue with migrant crime. And the people on the left who completely deny it, again, are just simply not paying attention to the actual facts. Daniel, thank you very much for that call. Appreciate that. But as you say, I think it's understandable, people going for more radical parties, if you feel that you've been, you've lost out. Let's go to Jay, who is in London. Jay, you want to talk about talk about crime, but particular crime, the theft of Morgan Mcweeny phone.
Well, it was just that Benedict mentioned that this subject is not going to go away, and I think I'm a little bit sceptical about that. These subjects do go away. They just disappear. Whoever talks about Lord Ali anymore? And by the way, I think he was probably involved with Lord Mandelson as well. They were, after all, flatmates many years ago. But these subjects, they just disappear because these corruption scandals, they keep coming thick and fast.
But the stench stays. I mean, the whole Kriegir Keir thing has stayed. It kind of, people haven't forgotten it.
Well, there's nothing came of it.
Well, the Prime Minister had to pay a load of money back, and also we exposed the fact that he was a complete hypocrite.
Yes, but
it dented his polling, and that has an impact on whether he stays as Labour leader.
Surely it was corrupt and illegal. Well,
no, it wasn't corrupt.
It wasn't?
No, apparently. No, they're allowed to get freebies. I just don't know why they need them. I've been able to buy my own clothes all my life.
Well, apparently it's not corrupt then, possibly for Morgan Mcweeny to conveniently lose one of his phones.
Well, he said he claims his phone was stolen.
Yeah, he claims that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you agree with Kemi Badenoch? Do you think it's extremely fishy?
Yes, it's more than fishy. Very, very convenient.
But your thing is, you think, look, the scandal will go away, and then we move on to something else.
Yes, it'll die down, and nothing will be done about it.
Because I think this is going to keep.
We have the worst thing hanging over us at the moment. The worst. It turns my stomach thinking about it. The rape gang scandals, and still nothing is being done about it.
This is true. This is true. Absolutely. Fair point. Jay, thank you for that. 10:33 is time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, going to be talking to former Conservative Party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith to see what he makes of all of the big stories in the news. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:35 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Benedict Spett's still with me. Get his response to what our next guest has to say. He's the former Conservative Party leader, former Work and Pensions Secretary as well, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith MP. Very good morning to you, Sir Ian.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. An awful lot to talk about. Small matter of war, small matter of that. I did want to talk to you, though, also just about where we are in terms of how people are coping, because we've got fuel prices going up. We know, although we've got, as of tomorrow, the cut in our household energy bills, but everyone's expecting they're going to go sky high after that 3-month Ofgem cap is finished, when we've got what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz. But at the same time, we've got the bizarre situation where we are seeing benefit claimants. They're going to be getting a 6.2% rise in their benefits this week. The two-child benefit gap is being scrapped, so a lot of homes, largely with only one working parent, if that, are going to get an extra, thank you, £3,500 a year for the extra children they've had that they can't afford. MPs like you lot, you're going to get an extra £3,300 cost of living handout. Meanwhile, most people who go out to work every day are really struggling. It doesn't feel fair anymore.
I agree, and you're the first person to tell me that we're getting some kind of handout. So I'm not going to take the handout. I can promise you this much. I shall give it to some worthy cause or other. But
Good to hear.
there's absolutely no reason why we should be receiving anything here as politicians. After all, we are in the upper income brackets, really, relative to the British public. And if only the lower group who are on benefits are going to get this stuff, I don't see why we should be then getting anything at all. So I don't approve of this, but notice it was put out there before we had a chance to debate it.
And MPs don't. I mean, MPs don't get a say over their pay. That was
No,
taken away from them.
this is an IPSA thing, and I just think it shows a lack of. That's the trouble when you take it out of politics and give it to another organisation. They don't understand that everything with us is politics. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's unnecessary.
And that's the thing, you know. Not everybody is going to get it. Oh, look, by the way, the price of fuel's gone up to get to work, so I'd like a pay rise, please, boss. And the boss is going to say, yeah, all of my costs have gone up as well, so it's a big no from me. And you know, people who are working are feeling at the moment, well, hold on a minute. You know, we're the ones paying for everything, and even when there's talk of helping out if energy bills carry on getting higher over the long term, helping out the people on benefits, people at the bottom end of the pile, the people who are working, and we're not just talking about the rich, we're talking about people at the very bottom end of the income scale. Every penny of tax they're paying more to help people who aren't working, and people more and more are just saying it's just not a fair exchange anymore.
But honestly, the government could do something very simple. Over 60% of the cost of fuel, including domestic fuel, comes out of taxation. 60%.
So the government's discretion about how much we're paying.
The government could easily cut that tax, and that would immediately give to everybody, working and otherwise, who need it, a boost during this period. You know, you can reinstate it if they want afterwards, but that's a political decision. But rather than going through complicated mechanisms, this is what I disagreed with Liz Truss and co. at the time. I said, what are we doing setting up new benefit systems to help people in certain categories and not in others? I said, the main thing is, it's the government which is rapaciously pushing the price up all the time by taxation. So government should take a bit of the tax off, which would allow the petrol pump prices to fall and the domestic fuel prices.
And that affects everything as well. But the extraordinary thing is, of course, the government, when the price of oil goes up and the price of gas goes up, they end up getting more money in tax anyway. They're still going to be better off. But this is the thing, it feeds into the price of everything. So you're giving someone on benefits a little bit of extra cash. But at the same time, everything they buy, food, all of the necessities, is going up.
Yeah, the whole thing is mad. That's why I'm saying it's in the hands of government to do it very simply, to be fair about it. But, you know, the honest truth is to get this thing down as soon as possible. And the best way to get it down is the government takes the lion's share of costs on petrol, pushes them up. As a result, it should say, OK, well, if it's very difficult out there, let us reduce that burden slightly. The second thing, of course, is if we had been drilling for oil, which we should have done as soon as the government came in, the last government should have done early, even though they finally came round to it. And I was arguing for this, because as a resource, a strategic requirement, we need to have our own oil and gas. I know of no other country, by the way, that would be sitting on so much oil and gas and not be drilling. For God's sake, any country in Europe be on their knees begging for such a resource. I mean, look at Norway, for God's sake. They're actually selling us oil that's coming from the North Sea, where we should be drilling it.
It's genuinely painful. I think you'll find, if you check with Ed Miliband, who apparently knows about these things, he thinks, we wouldn't benefit at all from drilling for North Sea oil, because there's a world gas and oil market, and therefore we wouldn't benefit.
Complete and utter nonsense. Of course there's a global gas prices, but here's the thing. We import gas from countries that have to turn it into LPG, liquid gas, now a very expensive and energy-consuming process. They then have to ship it on a very expensive transport. They then have to get it to the UK, where we have to take it back from the liquid form into gas, again expensive, and then ship it around our countries. The cost of that would disappear because we'd be pumping it as gas down the pipes into homes. I mean, really? And the truth is, this whole net zero nonsense that's going on at the moment has been an excuse for the advent and arrival of neo-communism into threatening all of us with regulations, cost impositions. We have a sort of pseudo-religion now going on that if you dare open your mouth about this thing, everyone calls you a climate denier and you're apostate. And you're treated like it was part of the Spanish Inquisition. I have to say, it's time that Britain realised, we managed to get across from different politicians, that we are fundamentally believers in freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, all these things started here in the UK.
Yep.
And we can't have this nonsense now that we have and bad decision making.
Well, I hate to tell you that according to Ofcom, who regulate what we do broadcasting, and we didn't get to it last week, but there's some various investigations, Ofcom consider climate science to be settled science and therefore not something that one can debate as an either or on a radio show. I have to say, I ignore that because I think that is completely and utterly against the law for them to try and regulate that. And there's no such thing as settled science. If you think there's such thing as settled science, you don't understand science. But also the debate
Ofcom is bonkers.
The debate over net zero
is a stupid statement to make. Nothing in the world is settled.
I know, but
in the sense that everything is
welcome to media regulation.
They may not like it, but the establishment is not settled, and I would refuse to take any advice from any establishment body like that. And the BBC will, of course, but I hope that Talk doesn't.
No, absolutely not. I mean, but that's the thing. It is absolutely extreme. I'm sure the Free Speech Union are going to be wanting to have words on that. But this is the thing. We are in a situation, though, where part of the dealing with the problems with fuel price rises as a result of the Strait of Hormuz being closed by Iran during the Iran conflict, part of the solution to that, according to our Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, when she meets with other Treasury ministers from other countries today, is she's going to say this is all about us becoming more sustainable at home and relying more on renewable energy. She thinks that is the solution. Got the Prime Minister, got the Chancellor, got Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary. They're all singing from the same hymn book, and I would say all of them quite insane. I'm absolutely serious. I think it's not possible to know the facts and to claim the arguments that they claim.
The whole issue about this, I just want to make a point here, is that there's no need to debate the fact of whether, of course, the climate is changing. It is. It's been changing for millions and millions of years, and it's changing now. We know that. But the reality here is what we're dealing with right now is a requirement for people to get their strategic resource right, which is the one that we are sitting on.
Yep.
And 20%, I think, of all of our energy requirements are met by electricity. So what we're actually doing is we're talking about that 20%.
Yeah.
The rest, whether it's cars, whether it's requirements for trucks and diesel and all the rest of it, energy comes from gas. Of course, gas will be required for many, many years to come. So why do we beat ourselves up over the issue as a debate about whether it's good or bad when we know we're going to require it for years to come? Even the Prime Minister says so. So if that's the case, why aren't we using our own oil and gas to generate this and thus keep the cost down?
It's utter madness. Let's talk about something else where we need to cut the cost down, and that is welfare reform. You strove valiantly, I would say, to try and basically get people from non-working families into work, cutting benefits, cutting the number of people living on benefits, the families and the children in particular going up on benefits. But we've seen an absolute explosion in the number of benefits being claimed for so-called disabilities for adults and children, certainly since 2020 and the COVID lockdown. Now, this is extraordinary. 1 in 8 parents now says that their child has a disability. These are largely behavioural issues. So 1.7 million youngsters now living with, we're told, long-term illness, disability or impairment. That's almost double where it was in 2015. That's when you were Work and Pensions Secretary, when roughly 7% of children said their children had a disability. Almost all of this is diagnosis of autism and ADHD. Do you believe for a moment that 1 in 8 children in this country is disabled?
Well, not according to the definitions that we have today, of course. There are lots and lots of people who struggle with disabilities and who genuinely need support.
Yep.
But the problem is what we've done. I mean, when I left, we had the lowest number of workless households since records began, and we had reduced the benefit budget. Now, what happened as a result of COVID, it's exploded. And the worst bit that's exploded has been things to do with mental health problems at one end of it. So depression and anxiety are now about 50-60% of all the claims on the disability allowances and sickness benefit. And the main thing about this is they are very treatable conditions. And most of all, we shouldn't be medicalizing them. Yep. So there can be assistance support through talking therapies. But the biggest problem is we should be saying to those who are claiming it, honestly, work is the best treatment for depression and anxiety. Even the health department says so. So what we should be saying is get them back into work and use some of the saving money that you use to help them with things like talking therapies and condition them. That's logical. The government hasn't done any of that so far. But we must, and doctors know this, we cannot keep medicalizing the ups and downs of life. What we have to do is recognize these are challenges. We must help people get over the challenges, but not lock them away into a terrible world where they sit at home watching television and their conditions will get worse.
Absolutely.
You'll be more depressed, more anxious, more suffering from PTSD, all these things, because you have no gainful employment.
Absolutely. Just finally, very briefly, if you would, it's a big topic, I realise, but Kemi Badenoch has suggested she might consider an outlawing marriage between cousins if she becomes Prime Minister. This is actually very common in many, many countries for the obvious reason that two cousins who share the same grandparents are far more likely to have a child with very severe disabilities. It's a massive issue in this country, but pretty much only under one particular ethnic group, and that is Pakistani heritage people, where it's completely the norm in Pakistan, and we are seeing an absolute explosion in the number of children who are being born with horrible, horrible disabilities. It's a no-brainer, this, isn't it?
Yeah, I actually for years thought that it was illegal.
Yes.
For first cousins to marry, and it's really the first cousin end of it, which is very difficult. You're too close to each other in DNA, and this causes all sorts of issues and problems. We've seen it, didn't even have to be a scientist to know that there were problems with this kind of relationship. And so all of that has to be dealt with. So I'm with her in saying that I think it's wrong, and it's not aimed at only one group.
No.
Everybody should face this. We all have the same problem. If this genetic code is too close but not completely the same, this is where you end up with disruptions in health terms, mental health problems, all sorts of things. So it is, as you say, I think, a no-brainer. It's not applied to one group or another. It's just to everybody who lives in the United Kingdom that this is simply unacceptable. And the trouble is, of course, not everybody gets married now. So that's where you have your other problem, which is how do you police the relationship of first cousins when there are children involved? Yeah. So that's going to be the thing that we'll have to think about.
That's a very, very good point. Sir Doug Smith, covered a lot of ground there. Always good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Benedict Spence, let you come back in on any of those topics.
Just on that last point, it wasn't illegal because people weren't deemed stupid enough for it to need to be illegal.
People used to do it. It was a clan thing. Cousin marriage was very common for many years.
I'm going to just have to push back on you. That's the point of why you had parish registers, so that people could see and it didn't need to be illegal. But the key issue is also people who marry their cousins and go abroad specifically to do it, to avoid detection, and then they bring the cousin and all the extended family here. That's going to have to be made illegal as well, and that probably means some very difficult choices for whatever government wants to police it.
It's another problem that we've imported to the country, which has a huge cost to an awful lot of other people. So much more to talk about. 10:49 is the time. Your thoughts on that very welcome. 0344 499 1000. Up next, going to talk to Sun journalist, our favourite, Thomas Godfrey, about Lawless Britain. Police failing to solve a colossal 92% of burglaries last year. What are they doing all day? This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:52 is the time. Delighted to be joined in the studio by data journalist at The Sun, Thomas Godfrey, who's joined us. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, our audience will know you well as after exposing all those Deliveroo and Uber riders who were boat migrants who were living in their asylum hotels and being paid for by us and yet raking a load of cash in hand doing those jobs. So you've got good form on basically getting to the bottom of stuff. Always love having you in. Now, you've got this... I have to say, this is a revelation. This is a Sun exclusive. But here's an investigation. Here's the thing, though. I'm surprised it's so good. Here's the thing. This is police failing to solve, and the number is staggering, 92% of burglaries in Britain last year. In a third of the country, police didn't crack a single burglary case, and also less than 1% of phone thefts have led to a suspect actually being charged. Forget actually, going to court or anything. We've got to ask, so 11 out of 12 burglaries not solved. We know the police say, well, we're dealing with serious crime, not minor crime, so littering and shoplifting they're not that bothered about. But, I mean, they can't just be dealing with historical sex crimes all day. What are police doing all day if they're not investigating and solving burglaries?
You're right, and burglary is a very serious crime. You come back and find your house has been broken into, your business has been broken into, warehouses where you keep stock, for example, if you're a tradie. I mean, it's a very serious crime.
Not even that, the fact that someone has come into your home when you're...
Your zone, yeah, your
I know
domain.
people who've sold their home because they were so terrified to be in their home after that point.
Absolutely, and all of those people will not be reassured by the statistics in the paper today. Out of 184,783 investigations that were closed into burglaries that happened last year, 170,000 or so ended with no one being identified or prosecuted. In 143,000 cases, the police didn't even identify someone it might have been, didn't even find a suspect. And of those 143,000, around 72,000 were closed within a month of the crime actually happening. So police investigated.
Well, they do. This is the thing. Anyone who's got any experience. I mean, I haven't. We've had 3 attempted burglaries in recent months, in the last couple of years, but we haven't had anyone actually getting in. As far as I can tell, they don't really do anything. They might go, is there a fingerprint? No. Even if there are, and then will they turn up? And the men in white suit, the white coats turn up. And have you got any CCTV? No. Oh, well then. And then they close it. And you have to, anyone I know who's had any crime at all properly investigated has had to provide all of the evidence themselves. That's what I did when my bag was stolen. Hasn't come to any fruition yet, but they've got an identified suspect. But they don't actually do anything. They'll say we can't find the suspect, but they didn't look for them.
No, precisely. And I mean, burglary generally only gets into the news when it's someone like Maya Jama or Mark Wright, Michelle Keegan. Harry Redknapp, we know, had his mansion in Sandbanks broken into. But I mean, this is happening 393 times a day where someone is burgled and the police don't catch them. I mean, it's an outrageous state of affairs.
Well, what do they do? This is the thing. Are they just are they tootling along? I mean, we know a lot of police forces don't even send anyone to a burglary because it's just here's a crime number for your insurance. If you've got insurance, they don't even bother.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, the police for a long time weren't turning up at all, and even when they were, it was a couple of years ago now, some statistics found they were taking as long as 28 hours to arrive. Well, every former police officer you have on this show and others, they talk about the golden hour. They talk about being there within the hour, finding evidence, taking forensics. That gives you the best possible chance of solving not just burglaries, but any crime at all.
But also, I'm constantly being told by police officers, whether it's a bag theft, a phone theft, a bike theft, a burglary, they always say, we've got so many crimes to solve. But the reality is, a very small number of people commit a lot of these crimes. So most of the phones are stolen by the same people. Bike theft, it's a gang of people. You only have to solve one of those and you take those people off the street.
Correct, yeah. I mean, one of the high-profile cases was Raheem Sterling, and a few years ago, he's had his house broken into a number of times now, but the first time it happened 6 years ago, when they actually arrested the suspects in it, eventually, they found they'd done a spate of other burglaries as well, and they went to prison for quite a long time. You're right, if you drill into one of these, eventually you're going to find a wider criminal network. I mean, the extent to which burglary, MPs telling us yesterday, effectively decriminalised in many parts of this country, it's got to the stage where gangs from other countries know that they will not be caught, and they're coming into Britain just to commit burglaries and then flying out again with their ill-gotten gains.
But I even find
that's the state of affairs we're at.
Every now and
foreign
then
criminals are coming here just to commit crimes.
But a police force will make a big announcement, we're doing crackdown, like they did that crackdown in London on phone thefts in the West End, and they said, and we've arrested all these people. You think, yeah, but you could have done that on any Monday in the last 5 years. You just chose not to do it. I mean, Morgan Mcweeny phone, I'm sure we'll never find either, the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff. But there's a growing frustration from people. You know, their council tax goes up, the other tax go. You know, there are more. You know, there are more police officers. You know, I know a number of police officers, and they're all desperate to leave the job because they feel like they're not getting the priorities aren't where they want them to be. They want to nab people committing burglaries to stop them committing other burglaries. That's what they came into the job to do. So why isn't it being done?
Correct. I mean, that would make Britain safer, wouldn't it? With the stated aim of any government.
Place to live.
Make Britain a nicer place to live, make it safer, make people feel secure in their homes. I mean, London is one of the hotspots for this. Colindale in North London, there are 131 burglaries last year, 0 were solved. Basingstoke, part of Basingstoke, rural part of Basingstoke, 96 burglaries, 0 solved. I mean, I could read out a list here of areas where talk listeners, not that they ever would, but they could go and...
don't do this. We're not don't go and burgle.
I'd recommend you would, but the only risk is with how lawless Britain's becoming that when you return home, having burgled someone else's house, your house has also been broken into, and the police don't solve that either. So maybe what's contributing to the surge in these statistics.
But
I mean, the true number here, 184,000 investigations were closed. The police are still investigating 40,000 more, but given 92% weren't cracked, I don't know if any faith they'll crack
when
any
they
of the
say
others.
investigating, what they mean is someone has filed a report and someone is going to like make a phone call or write an email and nothing else happens. That's the thing. Their idea of investigating. Benedict Spence, have you been burgled? Phone theft?
I've not, and now I'm terrified at the prospect of turning home to find that somebody's got there before I got to
They
them.
know where you are
This
now.
is a circular economy in action, isn't it? Where everybody's just thieving from each other.
Genuinely, when we used to go away with Christmas, we actually had friends, our neighbour's sort of mother used to come and stay in our flat. Because we wanted to know when I'm away, people know I'm away because I'm not on air. So we wanted to make sure that we had somebody in our home to make sure that, you know, people would know it was occupied.
I think footballers have that because obviously when you're playing football on TV, everything can go, well, you're not at home.
Ian Wright when he was covering the World Cup one time, wasn't it?
It's happened to my jammer, Ruben Diaz, and it's a way day raiders.
He's naming a load of young people that we haven't heard of. He's young. He knows no better. Thomas Godfrey, data journalist at The Sun. Always great to have you in the studio. Benedict had no idea about it. Fantastic to have you in the studio. You'd definitely like a Maya Jammer.
Oh, would I?
You would definitely like a Maya Jammer, trust me. Anyway, it's almost top of the hour. We're going to get to top of the hour. We're going to be talking about loads more. I want to hear from you, your experiences of this as well. 8344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk with the Home of Common Sense, fast approaching 3 minutes past 11. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much for your company. Whether you're listening or watching at home or at work, maybe just trying to get a bit of an escape from the kids on the Easter holes. We've all been there. We're here for you, Home of Common Sense. Coming up in this hour, we are going to be discussing how benefit claimants are able to get a 6.2% rise in handouts, while hard-working Brits are tightening their belts and paying for everything. White van workers are suffering as the Iran war sends the price of diesel in particular soaring. Kemi Badenoch vows to cut £200 from energy bills by drilling for North Sea oil and gas. Of course, Ed Miliband insists that won't help us, despite the fact it seems to be helping the Norwegians very, very well. And why Girl Guides are facing legal action over their ban on trans-identified boys from being part of the Girl Guide group. Clue is in the name, folks. The clue is in the name. Lots more to talk about, including, of course, what is going on with the Iran conflict, how that's impacting us, and the conversation we're just having about the 92% of burglaries in Britain that were not solved by the police last year. Absolutely astonishing statistics there from our guest Thomas Jeffrey from the Sun. Police failed to solve 92% of burglaries in Britain last year. What is your reaction to that? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and all the other topics we're talking about. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. You can get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text costs £1. Standard network rate message. And a very big good morning to Conservative commentator Benedict Spence. He's also still with us. Morning to you.
Good morning.
We started off in the last hour talking about the Iran war and how it's impacted everything. Today, the Prime Minister is hosting a number 10 summit on the conflict and how it's impacting the economy. He's got the energy suppliers, the shipping companies, the logistics people who make everything happen. And now I'm hoping he's going to actually listen to what they say about what the issues are and what needs to be done, as opposed to him sort of telling them that what we really need is more net zero, which is what I feel he's probably going to do. Australia's just become the latest country alongside Ireland and Poland and France, I think, to cut fuel duty, to cut prices at the pumps. Do you think that that is where we're going to head, even though the government says they're not intending to do that?
I hope. I hope that that's where we head, that that's what happens. But I do think almost uniquely amongst governments of major economies, ours seems incredibly blinkered by the idea of net zero and that it's somehow achievable, and that all you need to do to achieve it is just go even harder and faster, even as the rest of the world is sort of rowing back. Look, I don't know if anybody listening sort of believes in God or fate or anything like that, but if there were some sort of divine entity that was trying to tell you, guys, this isn't a good idea, you couldn't come up with a much better set of circumstances than the things that are currently being thrown at the British people and the UK economy. And yet we are just continuing down this path of going, nope, gas is evil, oil is evil, unless of course we get it from the Qataris, but we can't get that anymore. Yeah, and this is the hilarity of the situation. We should be completely energy independent. We could have used all of this fossil fuel to build out all sorts of other renewables or nuclear in the meantime. We could still do these things. It's still within our grasp to do so. We simply, I say we, our government simply chooses
not to. The British public are far more sensible. I would say the Tories, the current Tory leadership is now sort of anti-net zero, and she did make comments, but again, when you are in part of the cabinet, you're not supposed to speak differently from party policy. But the Tories got us into this mess. I mean, Labour originally, and then the Tories, they doubled down on it massively. And then the Labour, Ed Miliband, have put it on steroids. We are in crazy territory. Motorists are spending on fuel. They're spending more than a tenth more on what they're paying on fuel. Now, again, I've said this a million times, and I'm going to keep saying this. One of the issues we've got in this country is that policy is advised and made by people who live in central London. A lot of young people who cycle to work or get the tube, because we've got great public transport in most of London, and they don't understand that a car is not a little luxury for a weekend away. It's a necessity for either to get to work or for your actual work. They don't get that. It doesn't matter how many times you tell them. They're more obsessed with subsidising train travel for middle-class people to have bigger houses living outside of London or Manchester or Liverpool and get the train in. They don't. That's not how most people travel. 80% of people travel by car. 10% extra on your fuel cost when you have to fill up your car once a week is a huge sum of money out of people's very limited spending capacity at the moment.
Yes, and it's probably going to end up being a lot higher is the thing. And ultimately, if we're talking about oil going to $200 a barrel, which is entirely plausible.
It's what the Iranians are planning.
It's exactly,
and we're on $115 a barrel.
Exactly. Then it's an open-ended crisis is the thing. And as Liz Truss found out, you can't start making open-ended promises to people about trying to get those prices down. At some point, it's going to require difficult decisions, at least difficult for this government. It's going to involve them doing things they don't want to do, but we'll have to just face the music. Even if that means, reopening drilling in the North Sea or something like that, which would be a medium to long-term thing.
Yeah, we're not going to get the benefit of that by September,
there are some. Well, no, actually, there are some that could be online within 6 months. Is the really frustrating thing about this is you hear these MP go, oh, but that would take a couple of years, a year or two. You're thinking, A, that's not a reason not to do it, and B, it's not entirely true.
Yeah.
But also if that means the golden calf, spending less money on welfare because your tax take is lower because you're deciding to cut duty elsewhere, maybe you need to do that.
Well, and that's what ties in. Your benefit claim is going to get a 6.2% rise this week. Now, I know people on benefits or on low incomes, but the trouble is when there are so many people on benefits, and many of whom could be working, then the people who are really struggling to make ends meet, who've worked very hard, who've been drawn into a higher tax bracket, who are paying for everything, not getting any free handouts, getting anything back, then not unreasonably, we feel a bit peeved about it.
Yes, and if you continue to just pursue policies that will damage the economy, more people will become unemployed,
Ta-da.
more people will need benefits, and then you add to the whole
I think they should put up national insurance from employers more, because I think that would definitely help the economy. It's helped so much so far. No, but that's the thing. We are in mad territory where we've got a Prime Minister, a Chancellor, an Energy Secretary. None of them seem to understand at all how an economy works. And they criticise the Green... OK, mostly they're obsessed with reform, but we get loads of criticism from Keir Starmer about, Zach Polanski, the Green Party leader. Labour Party, most Labour Party backbenchers and activists now, and an awful lot of his cabinet, frankly, they're in the same territory as Zach Polanski, which is wealthy people bad, give more money, borrow more, just throw money at the poor, and then everything will be better. You are talking about making a cake that you've got right now that's already contracting smaller and smaller and smaller. The rich people are going to leave, who are, by the way, paying for the rest of us, and we're going to be producing nothing. But then we get to net zero much better, because we can be at net zero. If we don't make anything, we can't buy anything, we can't travel anywhere, we can't do anything. Great, and we're all living back in caves, then we will be at net zero. Well done, everybody.
All this is a secular version of the sort of the doomsday cult of the medieval period. Everybody thinks that Armageddon is around the corner and that, God is going to come back and Judgment Day will happen. That's all these people are. They are religious fanatics in a post-religious world. Their religion is that the climate, the great big thing in the sky, is angry with you and it's going to send down fire and brimstone. I can't see why it is that so many of them do not see that themselves. Although, of course, there's a great big crossover there with a lot of people who think that they're fundamentally good people and also don't understand when they do good old-fashioned medieval blood libels against Jews. There's a very important thing there, that fundamentally these people have not moved an awful lot from the average sort of peasant who would, go to church however many times a year. And, the high point of their year was if the crops didn't fail. That's basically the sort of the attitude that we have. And they're polling at, what, quarter nearly, in some places. It's insane, genuinely.
But it is insane, and yet, but this thing, the Green Party, I mean, they had Zach Polanski was sort of leading light at this march on Saturday. This is the Together Against the Far Right march, because apparently the biggest threat to the world and this country is Nigel Farage, apparently.
The far right.
Again, A, not far right, B, I don't believe he's a racist. They got in those big posters saying racist. But what is absolutely fascinating is how little the Green Party ever spends talking about green issues, environmentalism. Didn't come up at all in the Gorton and Denton by-election with Hannah Spencer. Yeah. It was all about Gaza, because, Gaza's the really big green issue. But it's fascinating, again, this march ended up being, as these things always do, most of the placards are either socialist worker, or they're these sort of pro-Palestine lot, a load of people pro the Iranian regime, anti-America, anti-Israel. I mean, the Green Party is basically now, and we've seen there's been a bunch of WhatsApps that have been exposed in a group, and again, not the fringes of the Green Party, quite a prominent group there, where they're just blatantly, openly, just anti-Jew. Let's just call it what it is, anti-Jew.
Yeah, that's the irony of the allegations of racism. But let's just do a hypothetical. Let's assume that Nigel Farage was in fact a racist, an awful racist, the worst kind. You will see actually how quickly people stop caring about racists when they can't afford to heat their houses, when their jobs disappear, when they can't afford food because prices have gone up and there are shortages.
The trouble is,
this is the thing.
When countries get poor, people often do start blaming people who are other than them.
We have been told in this country, in the post sort of Second World War establishment, that racism is the very worst crime. Listen, that's fine, but when you have a shortage of material goods and ability to look after yourself, as you say, what was it that led to the massive, awful things that happened in Europe in the 30s and 40s? Could it have been something to do with the dreadful economic situation that engulfed Germany? This is what happened. So if you want to stop the far-right march across Europe that we're told is always coming, maybe don't impoverish people. That's a really great start.
Yeah, I mean, it is really that simple. And it is very interesting, as one of our callers pointed out earlier, Daniel, about, the young people turning to the radical left because they've basically got a really bad deal. You've got, so much wealth now in my parents' generation. They got free university, those who went to university. They bought a house for sort of 20 grand, it's now worth $500,000 sort of thing. They got the pensions. They had a really good deal. They got to enjoy all the benefits of the oil wealth from the 80s. They've had a really, really good deal. Whereas younger generations, like my generation, we're going to retire a bit later, fair enough. But the next generation down, and it's you.
Yes.
You guys, again, you have to pay a fortune for your student, to go to be a student. You're getting on the housing ladder is almost impossible for most people. It is just going to be now you've got the AI threat. It's going to be a very different deal for you guys.
Well,
the idea that every generation gets better off, that's for the birds now.
Well, that's why I'm preemptively joining both the Revolutionary Communist Party and the National Front, because one of them is going to be in power at some point, and I've got to hedge my bets.
It's the only sensible way of doing it. Let's go back to the small matter of war in Iran, because we wake up every morning, for weeks now. What was this? Well, yeah, we're 5 weeks in, aren't we, to this war? And you've got American President Donald Trump will give an interview to someone, basically making lots of off the cuff remarks. We could just take Karg Island. This is an island. It's not actually Straits from us. It's further up the coast. It's about 8 miles square, and it's about apparently a third of the size of Manhattan. Is the best reference I can give. Difficult to but it's quite small. Nevertheless, pretty well protected because it's where 90% of Iran's oil come out. We've got Marines who've arrived in the region. What do Marines do? The US Marines, their entire job is to seize land. Just to go and seize land. So that's what they're there to do. We've got negotiations that are going on, or have we? We know there are some sort of messages being sent via Pakistan, but we don't know what's going on. Donald Trump claims he's won the war, he's had regime change, it's all sorted. We can stake that. We can get the nuclear capability. We can get Karg Island. We can do it all. And yet, right now, he looks unbelievably not in control of this war.
For all we know, he could be right. But we don't know.
And he doesn't know is my worry.
That's the point.
I don't mind us not knowing.
Yeah, they have made some significant strides in terms of the military objectives, but there's not much point in making strides in military objectives if you can't then win the peace, and if you don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
Now, if that's all about just stopping there being nuclear facilities and securing oil, that's fine. But as the Iranians have shown before, if you knock out the nuclear capacity program, they will just build it back up later if it's still the same regime. Does that mean ground troops actually going beyond simply occupying the coastline? Does that mean possible use of other proxy groups around the region? Nobody knows, is the thing. Nobody knows what that looks like. It certainly doesn't look like there's going to be any possible popular uprising, because why on earth would people go out onto the streets when both their own side and the Americans are shooting at them? Yeah, that's the problem that we face here. Even if the military objectives are achieved, what does the future look like? And I tell you what, the Gulf states, everybody else in that region, will be very anxious, because if the long-term plan does not involve regime change, that means revenge comes down the road at some point. The second the Iranians have their arsenals back up to scratch, which will happen very quickly, then it's payback time.
And this is the fascinating thing, is how much the Arab states in the Middle East have been supportive of Israeli and American strikes. They've known about this threat. They've increasingly said the whole problem in the Middle East is these guys. We're just trying to make some money, get some tourists over, to diversify our economies and have a nice life. They're looking at Israel and how Israel has been prospering, and they're saying, we'd like some of that, please.
Yes.
And it's not... And it's not going to happen while Iran is still a threat. That said, I'm going to guess even when the war is over, there are going to be some really cheap holidays to be had. Would you go to Dubai now? I mean, that's the thing. Lots of the stories over the weekend about some 70 Brits, by all accounts, arrested in Dubai over social media posts and more photos. Even just receiving, someone sends you a photo, a missile has hit the building next to me, putting out a post saying you don't feel safe. Oh, no, you are going to get arrested in Dubai. It's illegal. But as I was saying on the show earlier, all these people all these influencers and everyone else who've been saying, isn't it wonderful because you're so free there? There's no crime. It's such a safe place. It's exactly like Britain, but you've got sunshine and you've not got any tax and it's a lovely place to live. Oh, look, you're living in a totalitarian police state where you have no rights, where they can put you in jail without even charging you with something that would not be a crime in any democracy. And then they can take away your passports. You can't even leave the country. Oh, would you like the government that you don't pay taxes to back here? Would you like them to try and look after you? Would you like them to visit you, representative of them, to visit you in prison and to help you? I'm sorry, we're going to have to do that. British citizens deserve to get that help wherever they are. But you know what? Maybe don't move to a totalitarian police state, no matter how shiny and beautiful the buildings are. Maybe don't live in a country where you don't have basic human rights, and then this wouldn't happen. Just throwing that out there. If you want to live in a country in the Middle East, may I suggest Israel, which is a proper, thriving democracy, you don't get put in jail for writing a post saying, I feel scared about the missiles.
There's no such thing as a perfect country. Everything has a trade-off. It's a similar thing, I think, to actually say living in China. China has very low levels of crime, fantastic public services. However, and I don't need to say any more. And it's a similar situation for a lot of states in the Middle East. But all I would say, just as a sort of a counterpoint to what you were saying, is when you have a government such as ours that's prepared to go into bat on behalf of members of the Muslim Brotherhood, say, in countries like, say, Egypt, who have never lived here and are not really British citizens, but we've given them the citizenship anyway, I think you'd be a little bit ticked off if they went to such extremes to get Mr. Abdel Fattah to come to Britain, and then they said to you, well, you should have paid a bit more tax then, shouldn't you? I think actually you'd be really ticked off by that.
Just because we're mad doesn't mean. I mean, it doesn't mean that we should encourage people to go be mad at that. Can we also talk about this attack? Well, it appears to be an attack in Derby on Saturday night. A black Suzuki Swift was driven into pedestrians at Friar Gate about 9:30 on Saturday night. Very crowded area, lots of people there. Police are continuing to question a man arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. The car hit and injured very seriously, thank God not life-threatening, no one died, but 7 people in the Derby city centre. Now, counter-terrorism police have joined the investigation. Derbyshire Force said this was common practice, an incident of this nature. They're open-minded about the potential motives. They described the suspect as a 36-year-old Derby man, originally from India, but has lived in the UK for a number of years. He's also being held on suspicion of causing serious injury through dangerous driving, grievous bodily harm with intent and dangerous driving. Now, not currently being treated as terrorism, but certainly modus operandi says that. But then, of course, we had that case with the driving the car in Liverpool.
Yes.
And when, again, I think we all just went, well, that looks horrible. We've seen a spate across Europe. That looks like it's a terror attack. And it wasn't. It was something very... In fact, I think all of our minds were changed on that case a million times, weren't they? Was this man just afraid someone had banged on his car window? Had his foot slipped? Had something? And then at the court case, when he finally admitted his guilt, we heard the full horror of what he'd done with intent. This case is very confusing.
It is, and obviously we can't speculate beyond a certain point. All I can say is I understand why people's minds go to the possibility of it being an attack, because, as you say, the overwhelming number of instances where a car does plough into people in Europe in the last couple of years, it is that. And there's no point in pretending that
it's not a car doing it, it's someone deliberately driving into people.
Well, this is what I mean, but there's no point in denying.
I've managed all my life not to drive into people. It's amazing. It's not. My car's never done that. Funny that.
No, I've seen how you look at some of those pedestrians. Sometimes the ones that walk very slowly.
The cyclists.
Exactly.
I do not.
But this is the thing. There's no point in pretending that it doesn't happen. You and I are sat in London, and on every single bridge in London, every single major building, there are giant bollard systems in place, and cages and lumps of concrete, because this happens. There's no point in pretending that it doesn't. It may not be in this instance.
2 terror attacks happened
literally
outside.
Yes. So there's no point in pretending that it doesn't happen. It may not be the case in this instance, but I understand entirely why people's minds go there, because human beings like to recognise patterns, and that has been a bit of a pattern in the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, we make assumptions all the time based on the reality that is around us. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of the topics we're talking about, anything and everything. In particular, police failing to solve 92% of burglaries in Britain last year. What is your reaction to that? Because I really, please, if you're in the police, please get in touch. What are you doing if you're not solving burglary? I mean, I don't even begin to understand how in some areas, a third of Britain, no burglaries are solved at all. How is that even possible unless the police literally don't even get out of bed in the morning? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message, but your calls welcome on all the topics we're talking about. 11:23 is the time. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:25 is the time. This is indeed Talk. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Lots of you getting in touch about those burglaries, and 92% of burglaries not getting solved. Sue, this is the thing. I said, what's your reaction? Sue's gone, what do they actually do? I mean, this thing, what do police do if they're not solving burglaries? Derek says, but they make multiple arrests for online abuse, so we should all feel safe. Ray says, going after people for social media posts while failing miserably at basic policing is a depressing state of affairs. I mean, bearing in mind, there are 60 arrests a day for non-crime hate incidents. What are you doing arresting people for non-crimes if you're not arresting crimes? Is it just a bit easier because you don't have to actually go and take fingerprints or anything? I don't believe that that's what most police want. The coppers I know really care about the job. They're tearing their hair out, frankly, all desperate, counting down to retirement when you're doing your 30 years of service and you get your full pension, because they just despair at the priorities of the bosses. So if you're a copper, call in, don't give your real name, or send us a message and we can just read it out. I want to hear from you. What is really going on? Jen says, so basically it's free rein for theft. We should thank the far left who've infiltrated the police from the top down. Soft on crime, unless it's speech. Ash says the police are as much use as a chocolate teapot. I always love that. I'll tell you what, I love a chocolate teapot.
So now I'm hungry.
As we know, because I've already got the Easter eggs in the house, chocolate tastes better when in a circular orbal.
Yes,
they just do.
Somehow.
Do you know what? I bought Easter eggs for my daughter to go back for you. I bought the Easter eggs. The boxes of Easter eggs. One of them didn't last an hour. My husband and I looked at it and both went, shall we? Cup of tea, Sunday afternoon. cup of tea. Let's start on the first Easter egg, and then I had to go and replace it.
It's a much underrated day, Easter, I think, actually. Not even Easter Sunday, the whole sort of experience.
When do you allow the Easter egg? Because my daughter was absolutely... I thought we weren't allowed to eat them until Good Friday, and I said, well, you're not allowed to. Rules is different for the people who buy the Easter eggs.
Oh, I was going to say. You let eat on Good Friday.
I've given in over the years to Good Friday eating of chocolate.
No, it's Easter Sunday still. I'm a bit more resolute than your average person. That's a lie. Look at the size of my stomach.
I was going to say...
We're both sat here going, how long can we keep this going?
I wasn't saying a word, Mr. Spence. Anyway, let's get to your calls about burglary. Melvin's on the line in Suffolk. Hello, Melvin. What do you want to say?
Hello, Julia.
Hello.
Love the show.
Oh, thank you. Wait a second. Stop the burglaries. When do you eat your Easter eggs?
Easter.
I know, but how early? When's it? Is it Easter morning, Easter Sunday morning, or do you allow a bit early?
It would be Easter Sunday.
Oh, it's just me. Got no willpower. Anyway, go on, let's talk about burglary.
Yeah, where has it all gone wrong? I was a detective constable for 24 years.
Aha.
And we had problems in a town on the eastern region, probably the equivalent of the borough of Highbury.
Yep.
So similar sort of numbers of arrests, etc. At one point, we were suffering 112 house burglaries a month, not commercial premises, just house burglaries. What was identified as these burglaries were being committed by a small number of people.
Yeah.
So one of the things that when you become a police officer, you swear an oath. And one of the first words in that oath is to prevent crime.
Yep.
And that is what we did. We, rather than investigate the burglars, but we tried to prevent them. And the ways we did that was from intelligence, identifying the people. Most police forces know which group of people are committing the crimes. And basically, we never gave them a moment's rest. We followed them around literally with a camera, openly filming them. We would send a letter to them saying, we are watching you, we know what you're up to.
Yep.
We would visit them in prison when they were put in prison to find out what other burglaries they'd committed and their MOs and everything. So much so that on one occasion, 2 years later, the same house got burgled, and the intelligence we'd gained was they only burgled a house near a bus stop. So we said, is there a bus stop? We said, is there a bus stop outside? Yes. So we went straight to the bus station, and there and behold, there's the two people sat there on the bench with the video recorder and TV.
That's extraordinary. Just using a little bit of your brain, and then you can catch these people. And you prevent the next crime. That's the key thing.
We used to pick them up from prison when they were released and give them a lift to wherever they wanted to go, so we knew where they were staying. And we would literally, as soon as they had been caught, our job was to keep them off the streets.
Yep.
So if they nicked a Mars bar in Woolworths or whatever, they were put straight back to prison as a breach of their parole.
Because the next thing they would do would be someone's house.
Yeah.
So why is that not done now? Is it a lack of resources? Is it the chief constable's priorities? What's going wrong?
Well, I speak to my son, who's a police officer, and it is the amount of other crime that wasn't about, really.
Like what?
The electronic crime, the hate crime. Yeah, they're dealing with all of that. I mean, this team was only 4 officers strong, but we were just totally 24/7 dedicated to house burglars. We cut those 120 burglaries down a month to 12.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
literally 6 months.
That's just by doing the job. But again, it's like the hate crime. I'm not entirely sure there is that much hate crime. It seems to me the actual obvious hate crime that happens on our streets doesn't actually ever get investigated or prosecuted at all. But you say like electronic crime. Is that because there's a lot of it going on and it's very time consuming to investigate?
Yes, I mean there's so much of it now. I mean, I have been retired a few years and. This was sort of not a problem as it is now today, and the amount of it.
I still think I'd prioritise burglaries, though, because that's more of an invasion of someone's home. That would be my priority.
I think that they need to go back to the word prevent. Prevent, not. Yeah.
Yeah, but you prevent crime by catching the people who are committing most of the crime, because it's a small number of people who are committing virtually all the crime. Melvin, great call. Thank you so much, and good luck to your son in his career as well. Dave is on the line in Luton. Dave, you're also a former copper.
Hello, Julie. Yes,
Hello.
I am. Thank you for taking my call.
Thanks for calling.
That's right. First time to yourself, but love your show.
Have you been two-timing me with other presenters?
Only a couple of times previously, but always to
they all say that. The men all say that, Dave.
I had to ring because I'm so frustrated about what's been discussed today.
What do you want to say?
Okay, so I appreciate the figures of non-detected burglaries, but, you know, no matter what the police do, you could throw all your resources at burglaries, but unless there's evidence left at the scene or, you know, we for example, if someone walks in your house when you're away, they kick the door in, take your jewellery, walk away again. Unless there's evidence to actually find that person, no matter what you do, intelligence or anything, you may be able to suspect someone, but you're never going to identify who they are. You know, and I find that really frustrating because we had a great burglary team, we probably still have, where I worked in Hertfordshire. And we would turn up, as an officer on the street, I'd turn up, that we'd take pictures of the property so we could build an MO, modus operandi it's called, of who the offenders may be. And yes, it's potentially the same sort of several people in that area, but we'd need evidence. Yeah. And even if we did arrest them and we felt we had enough evidence, it still wouldn't pass the threshold test for CPS. Right.
So there's a frustration level for you. That said, I know so many cases, and we've had people on the phone lines here, but I've got actual friends this has happened to, where in the case of their bike being stolen or their phone being stolen, they've literally taken they're not challenging because there's a group of guys doing it. They've tracked their phone. I know my phone is in this building. Please phone out. I've got a number plate of the van that my bike was put into. I've photographed the guys doing it. Nothing is done. That actually, when there is evidence, the police still aren't following up.
Well, you know, it's not from my experience, because whenever we had a crime allocated to us, if there's any evidence where there's a suspect identified, we'd have to act on it. Yeah. I think it depends on the police force. But, you know, I think it's really hard to detect crimes. And when we say it's only a few people that commit the majority of crimes, as was discussed earlier, we're getting a lot more people coming in that come into this country just to commit the crime. Yeah. So it may be also because there's more burglaries occurring. And I don't know if you're aware of the sanction detections they have in forces, or they used to have.
No.
Well, the government, it's all politics. The government would set out figures for forces where they had to show they detected, you know, a vast amount of crime, for example. And some of those crimes are not sanctioned detection. For example, drink driving wasn't a sanctioned detection. So I could arrest 5 drink drivers in a week. That wouldn't give any figures for the government.
Oh no, this is about the priorities. This is just to say they've got your priorities. So the priorities are this, this and this. Then, frankly, everything else goes out the window.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So they didn't want me to arrest drink drivers. They'd prefer me to give someone, at the time, a penalty notice for shoplifting, and that's sanctioned detections. But to me, a drink driver was a lot more important.
And I think to most of us, I'm thinking as a laywoman, let's do both. But there we are, I'm old-fashioned. Dave, fantastic call. But Dave and Melvin, thank you so much. Very proud to have a load of coppers doing this, on the phone lines. I have to say, I mean, that's the thing. I always make it clear, not having a go, ordinary police officers who were just trying to do their job and are tearing their hair out at the priorities. The chiefs are doing it. The chiefs are the problem, and the politicians. Benedict?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It's important to recognise what Dave said there at the end, which is that there are people who come into this country specifically because they know that their opportunities for theft are going to be particularly good. And also, what's going to be very frustrating is that a lot of those people come from the same kind of places. We don't want to speculate on where they are. As an aside, Albania, Romania and Bulgaria are lovely places to visit this time of year, as long as you don't take a lot of valuables with you. But if this is the other thing that's being said, which is that the evidence threshold is quite high, listen, maybe it might simply be that in order to investigate those people, you have to lower those thresholds. If it is, as he says, why is it that we're talking about abolishing juries rather than simply lowering the threshold at which police can investigate people that they know are thieves?
Or bring charges.
Yeah, that I think would be the thing to do.
11:36 is the time. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Up next, going to be talking about where we are with our energy prices. White van man really suffering, as we've seen the price of fuel going up by 10%. What is the government going to do about it, if anything? This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:38 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Let's talk right now about, well, what is the government going to do about sky-high fuel prices? Let's talk to Andrew Montford. He's Director of Net Zero Watch. Good morning to you, Andrew.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for not joining us. Well, headlines today about white van man basically bleeding cash. Diesel prices have gone up with the Iran war. We've seen prices at the pumps pretty going up about, around the 10% mark. An awful lot of people not just getting to work, but actually at work, doing their job, having to fill up, once a week. This is a huge sum of money for an awful lot of people. The government has basically ruled out cutting fuel duty, despite the fact you've got, Australia, Spain, Ireland, Poland. They have already moved to do that. And today we've got the Prime Minister hosting a number 10 summit on the Iran conflict, but the impact on the economy, talking to energy suppliers, talking to the shipping companies and other sort of logistics people about what they can do. But what do you think the answer is?
I must say, I don't think there is very much that can be done. The kind of things that we need to do, drilling for oil, increasing our refining capacity, that kind of thing takes years. It doesn't take weeks and months. Essentially, the political establishment has put us in an extremely bad place by trying to wind down our fossil fuel capacity. And by driving up the cost of electricity. Yep. And fixing that is going to be the work of many decades. Yep. So we ought to be pointing fingers at not only Ed Miliband and Keir Starmer, but also the Conservatives before them, and saying, what were you people doing? They have been absolutely crazy, and they are going to ruin lives. And it's not just fuel. I mean, the thing that's really worrying me and colleagues is the fact that fertilizer prices are going to go through. Are we going to be short of food? Well, food prices will certainly go up, but that's going to hit the developing world much harder than it hits us. They're really going to suffer. Those kind of things are incredibly important. Yeah. And again, how have we got to the situation where we don't make our own fertilizer anymore?
And I was absolutely stunned to read that at the weekend. I sort of just went through, just he shouted at me off the page that we are completely dependent on external suppliers of fertilizer. Bearing in mind, we've got, the Thomas Malthus and those, for many, many centuries, you had people predicting that if the Earth's population even got to 1 billion, there'd be too many people on the planet, we'd all die. You've still got that sort of Malthusian, anti-human part of the green zealotry is that too many humans, we're bad for the planet, we're using up too many resources, but we actually produce plenty of food now. People aren't starving because of a lack of food, they're starving because there's civil war or totalitarian governments. There is plenty of food on this planet, and that is almost entirely down to fossil fuels being used to make fertilizer, which produces the vast amount of food that we can have. But we're looking, as you say, for your fertilizer prices going up for us, pushing up our food prices, but crucially, lots of poorer countries not being able to get fertilizer at all, and food shortages in those countries. Third world countries having food shortages, we know what that leads to. Massive political instability. We are talking about, an explosion of bad things happening because of a lack of fossil fuels. Now, people can blame Donald Trump for that and the conflict, but this has focused minds on how crucial a role fossil fuels play in our everyday lives, not just in your car journey you're getting on a plane, but in heating your home. Everything we do, everything we buy, everything we eat.
Yeah, of course, but of course the one mind it hasn't focused is Ed Miliband's. And I think he is determined to carry on in this crazy direction, regardless of the human suffering.
As is the Prime Minister, as is Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor. Rachel Reeves is at a meeting today with other Treasury ministers from around Europe, and she's going to be saying, to deal with this, what we should all do is push on with our net zero and our
and again, the idea that will make any difference on the timescales required is bonkers. And of course, you and I both know, Julia, that it'll make things worse, not better. So that's what we've got to get away from. But what I would say is there is a silver lining to this, which is that all this is going to be highly inflationary. Yeah. Interest rates are going to go up. and that's going to make it much more difficult for Ed Miliband to get all the wind farms he wants to build, because nobody's going to want to build wind farms.
It's going to be a big price that we're all going to pay for that. I mean, I've always been of the view, two things. One is that net zero doesn't survive contact with reality and the electorate facing up to it. And the other crucial thing, though, is that we're going to have things get a lot worse before people wake up and to say, right, to hell with all this madness, because people are not going to put up with being poorer. And when people say, oh, they're concerned about climate change and net zero, they're just watching the BBC and they're being lied to and facing propaganda every day when they watch, a David Attenborough documentary. And actually, and most MPs don't know. I mean, the 2 or 3 basic facts about any of this stuff. I asked them, they know nothing about this stuff. I'm pretty sure neither does Ed Miliband. But I've always thought, we're going to have a blackout on a cold December evening before everyone goes, right, is everyone clear now that this doesn't work? When the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, we haven't got enough gas, oil, nuclear power, and we need to wake up, and we need to be fracking, we need to be drilling for gas and oil, we need to be building nuclear power stations en masse, and we need to get to energy security, because energy security means food security, it means quality of life, it means a prosperous society, it means better healthcare, it means living longer, and it means better defence. And you don't get any of those things if you don't have energy security.
Yeah, I would love to put Ed Miliband in front of you, Julia. So
would I. Come on, Ed. He's too fit. It's so frustrating. He gets interviewed on the BBC and Sky, and I'm going to credit Laura Kunsberg. She'll put her questions, but they never actually push him on. What you're saying is provably untrue.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's right. We've been proving him wrong for years, and he just doesn't care. And he's going to carry on.
Do you think he knows? This is my thing. I don't think Keir Starmer believes in anything and knows anything. I don't think Rachel Reeves can even add 2 + 2, to be honest with you. The abacus is broken this week. Do you think that Ed Miliband, is he a true believer, or is this just his shtick because now this is his new being the darling of the left thing? Do you think anyone who's looked at the facts and who talks as he must do to energy boss companies and industrial leaders, is it possible for him to know the facts and still be pushing on with his policies, thinking they'll make things better?
Yeah, no, he is a true believer. And the problem with true believers is that facts have no influence on them. Essentially, if someone presents him with a fact and says, look, I don't know, your wind farms are putting the price of electricity up, here's the data, he will blank it. He will say, OK, this is a denier or does not compute. It's just cognitive dissonance. And he will shut it out of his mind. The problem with the true believers is that they're not using the rational part of their brains to reach conclusions. They're going with their emotions, essentially. So yeah, it's very difficult to have any influence on him. So this is where what you said before, Julia, was absolutely right. We won't get a fix until reality bites. And at the moment, reality is starting to bite quite hard. I mean, we've been very interested that, we are now getting people from the left coming to talk to us because they are starting to worry about, they can
the trade
see
unions.
Now,
if you care about the poor people in this country and inequality, they're the people who are going to be hardest hit.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the Unite Union, the big manufacturing trade union, has defunded Labour tells a story. The fact that they have not gone even further than that also tells another story, which is that they're not really there yet. They're getting there, but they're not all the way as yet, because manufacturing is going to be wiped out completely. We will have no manufacturing.
Well, then we'll have net zero. It'll be great. We won't produce any emissions. We'll just be getting stuff. We'll be buying stuff that's shipped over on oil-powered tankers from China, where it's made in factories by slave labour and using coal-fired energy. But we'll be net zero. We can all pat ourselves on the back and say what lovely people we are.
Well, that's right. And what will happen is our economy will implode. I mean, those manufacturing businesses.
A happy Monday to you too, sir. But honesty isn't doom-mongering, it's just the facts. Andrew Montfort, you do fantastic work there, Director of Net Zero Watch, Andrew Montfort. Benedict Spencer, that's my thing about, I don't think Keir Starmer believes in anything, but I think Ed Miliband, this is just his shtick now.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is, now that he's nailed his colours to the mast on it and he's fully bought into it, he's never going to actually pivot away from it. Because then he will make himself look like an even bigger idiot than he actually is. That's the problem, is that once they've doubled down on it, that's it. That's where they're going to go. And it will require somebody very brave to actually take him out of the position that he finds himself in as energy minister. And they're not going to do that because he has so much support from within the party.
Yeah, mind-blowing, because the activists and the MPs are mad as well. 11:48 is the time. We're going to take a break and talk about something completely different. Up next with Maya Forstater, Chief Executive of Sex Matters. You want to stay tuned for this. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Just a breaking news for you. Were you to ever be foolish enough to listen to a BBC radio station, BBC Radio 2 have sacked Scott Mills, their breakfast show presenter. He's been sacked of immediate effect, sudden and unexpected sacking over, quote, his personal conduct. He is no longer contracted to work with the BBC. We'll get you more on that as and when we find out more about it. Very interesting. Right, let's talk now to Maya Forstater. She's Chief Executive of Sex Matters. A very good morning to you, Maya.
Good morning, Julia.
As every day is, there's another day of ridiculous stories where we're talking from... again, about trans issues, because they're just, the world's obsessed with these things. But this is very important one, which is something we discussed on the show last week in terms of prisoners who put behind bars who are trans-identified men. They're not trans women, they're men. Often they're behind bars for sex attacks or violence, and yet they're put into women's prisons, even if it's a wing in a women's prison, nevertheless a women's prison. But in Scotland, a trans killer, Paris Green, he is a man, born Peter Lang, he was sentenced to at least 18 years for sexually attacking and torturing Robert Shankland to death back in 2013. He was put into a women's prison where he attacked a female warder and now has been moved to a male prison wing and is banned from wearing women's clothes. And this after John Swinney, and of course Nicola Sturgeon before him as leader of the SNP and First Minister, insisted that these people were completely safe to be in women's prisons. Oh, what a surprise he wasn't.
He should have never been in a women's prison. We've heard from women who've been in that prison with him who've been traumatised by his presence and his conduct there. And after he attacked the prison warder, he was kept in the women's prison. It's an absolute disgrace that he was there in the first place, and now he's been moved into a prison that has a male wing and a female wing. But as we understand it, he is still going to be allowed to associate with the women.
I mean, this is the thing. I mean, then we know that women in prison are invariably women who have been abused as children or by partners. They are largely vulnerable. Yes, I still think people have to go behind bars if they've committed certain crimes, but we're talking about a violent male prisoner, and we've been told, haven't we, again and again, particularly by the Scottish National Party leadership, that they would not imprison they'd not allow a trans-identified man in a women's prison if he had attacked a woman, but if he'd attacked a man, then apparently it was safe for him to be around women. I mean, this is not just it's weird, it's scary that they think like this.
It is, and no man, however he identifies, however he dresses, whatever pronouns he uses, and whether he has had surgery or not, should be in a women's prison.
Because it's a women's prison.
Exactly.
There's a clue in the name.
To protect women. And you know, there's the crimes that you know people have committed, and then most rapes are not prosecuted.
Yeah.
So the only safe thing to do to look after women is make sure that women's prisons are for women only. It's not
almost like there was a reason why they started having separate prisons for women in the first place. It's quite and toilets and the like, and separate groups like, for instance, the Girl Guides. Now, they were in the news last week because they basically, although we're approaching very quickly the anniversary of that Supreme Court ruling last April, making it very clear that if it was a single-sex service or place, then it had to be for just one sex, and that was defined by biological sex. Took Girl Guides quite a long time to basically say, right, we're going to remove the trans-identified boys from Girls Guides, but they've said they're going to be removed from this autumn. I think a lot of people feeling like it should happen rather sooner than that. But Girl Guide is now facing a legal challenge for letting trans-identified boys remain in the organisation despite the ban. Lawyers have been instructed by the mother of a Girl Guide to prepare a pre-action letter arguing that it's a safeguarding issue. I would agree with that mother. But we've also had people kicking up on the other side saying their child has tried to self-harm because he's been in the Girl Guides and now he's not going to be in the Girl Guides and he identifies as a girl. This is becoming a very bitter battle over what should be a really simple thing. Girl Guides is for girls. Scouts is open to boys and girls. Not complicated.
Exactly. And the thing about Guides is because it is a all-girls organisation, all of the safeguarding, all of the safety procedures are set up to assume that everyone is a girl. Yeah. So, you know, whereas in Scouts, like you say, you have boys and girls and you have to think about when you separate them and when they're together. You just don't think about that at Guides because you don't think that there are girls there. I mean, that there are boys there, sorry. So I think this mother who's bringing this case has a very good point. It's good that Girl Guides has come to its senses, but currently it's still operating unsafely by having boys in a situation that is only safe for girls.
And it's still a year on. I mean, it's a year on from that ruling, which you didn't have to be a lawyer to understand that ruling. It was 8 pages. It was written in plain English.
Exactly, and there's no reason, you know, if you discover that there's a safeguarding problem in an organisation, you know, adults are not supposed to drive individual children home. You don't say stop doing that in September. You say stop doing that right now.
It's either safe or it's unsafe. If it's unsafe,
exactly.
It's unsafe on Monday as opposed to in September. Yeah, it's quite extraordinary, isn't it? Let's talk about just one other thing. A Labour-run council at Plymouth, this Plymouth City Council, they want to hoist the Progress Pride flag. This is the one that's got, you know, the Black Lives Matter, the LGBTQ plus, you name it, everything flag. It's not just the old gay pride flag. They want to host it on a flagpole outside the Guildhall. They've been accused of unlawful plans, though, because Christian and women's rights groups say the move is in breach of political neutrality laws under the Local Government Act of 1986. Is it against the law?
I'm not sure that it is, to be honest. I mean, that law is to prevent people promoting particular political parties. And whatever you say about the Pride Progress flag, it isn't a political party. I think, you know, freedom of speech is the freedom to do stupid things. But if you do stupid things when you're elected as a council, people are able to vote you out if they want.
Well,
I'm not sure it's unlawful, but I do think it's a.
But I have to say, I do think most people have had enough of it. So under the plan submitted by the council, they're going to fly the flag. Wait for it, everyone. Flown during LGBT plus History Month in February, the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia and Biphobia in May, and also the whole month of June, which is apparently Pride. I mean, enough already. I mean, we only get 12 days of Christmas. We get about 6 months of Pride.
I know. I mean, but some things aren't unlawful, but you know, they're your politicians. You can write to them, you live there, and tell them not to do it.
It's not a safeguarding issue. It's not a safety issue. So yeah, you concern yourself with the stuff that actually is about, you know, rights and safety of girls and women, which is rather more important than this. But as a general rule, I just don't know why councils need to fly any flag other than the national flag. I just don't understand it at all. It's quite bizarre.
Exactly. It's much simpler if they can just say no to everyone than try and pick who they're going to wave a flag for.
Exactly. Maya, thank you. Always good to talk to you. Maya Forstater, Chief Executive of Sex Matters. Benedict Spence, I mean, it's just enough already.
I think that point about actually it's not the job of local councillors who are going, oh, this cause and that cause and this is so important. I mean, you know, it goes back to what the conversations all of last week about, you know, praying in Trafalgar Square.
Yeah.
No, you've got your places of worship. It's not a special situation where everybody can have a go, everybody can put up a flag.
Is there a big issue with biphobia?
Yeah,
is that a thing?
It's not your job. Just deal with the bins. And please just do that.
Deal with the bins.
Like, come on.
Please, for the love of God, just do the bins.
Yeah, that's all we need. I don't need a flag.
Just take all of this virtue signaling nonsense out of politics, especially local politics. You say, you know, they always claim they haven't got any money, haven't got any time to do anything. Well, apparently you can afford quite a lot of these flags, can't you? Anyways, coming up to the top of the hour, up next we get the latest headlines. We'll talk about all of the big stories of the day with Baroness Kate Hoey. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. So good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 2 minutes past midday is the time. This is Talk with a home of common sense. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. Whether you're at home, whether you're at work, whether you just sneaked away from the kids to get a bit of a break during the Easter holidays, welcome. Little bit, I say quiet sanity. You know, am I quiet? You know, Julia sanity. No, that doesn't work either. But you know what I mean. We're here for you. Anyway, if you've missed anything from the show, go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe so you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about how benefit claimants are receiving a 6.2% rise in handouts, while hard-working Brits who are paying all the taxes to pay for the benefits are tightening their belts. 10% more being spent on fuel for just people to get around at the moment. That's to get to work. That's for work. Particularly hitting white van man, of course, who actually needs, the vehicle for actually doing their work. We're going to be talking about Kemi Badenoch demanding more answers over Morgan Mcweny's what she called extremely fishy phone theft. What on earth is going on in Iran, with Iran promising to set US troops on fire if Donald Trump goes ahead with his order for a ground invasion, particularly of Karg Island, where 90% of the oil from Iran comes out. All of these stories, by the way, all completely linked, massively linked. And Labour also, this is an extraordinary story emerged at the weekend. Labour is planning an overhaul of equality laws that basically will mean prioritising services for people who are facing inequality. So the usual vulnerable groups. So if you've got a job, probably if you're white, if you're straight, you are not going to be prioritised for services. You go to the back of the queue. But that could also include things like, NHS operations. I kid you not. Do you get priority because you're on benefits, or because you're from an ethnic minority, or because you're trans? I mean, that would be extraordinary, wouldn't it? Well, we're going to be talking about that a little bit later as well. So I'd like to say, joining me in the studio still is Conservative commentator Benedict Spence. A very good afternoon to you. Or did another morning then? Good afternoon.
That should be a thing.
Very interesting, that story we had, just breaking news 10 minutes before the top of the hour. Scott Mills, who's a BBC Radio 2 presenter, big figure, one of their big stars. He's been sacked from Radio 2 over personal conduct, according to reports. He's no longer going to host his popular Radio 2 show. Apparently he's actually been off for a few days. But according to the Mirror, the director of music at the BBC, Lorna Clark, has confirmed the sacking in a statement to staff. She said, I wanted to personally let you know that Scott Mills has left the breakfast show on the BBC. I know that this news will be a sudden and unexpected and therefore must come as a shock. I felt it was important to share this news with you at the earliest opportunity. Now, a lot of people are pointing out we don't know what this is. I've obviously got my feelers out. I'll let you know what I hear, but what I can legally, don't know what this would mean. We've recently had, Kay, I've forgotten her last name, up in Scotland.
Andrews.
No, Kay. Okay. Oh, I've got absolute blank. But Gay Adams. She lost her job for apparently, she threw a pen. I'm thinking she dropped her pen and it hit something for not being supportive to a trainee or something. Yes. Ridiculous stuff. Then you've got Hugh Edwards, who was suspended on full pay while he was under charges for having images of babies and young children being raped. Now, I'm so sorry, but the BBC doesn't seem to have a very good record on this in terms of how people get treated. Now, so we don't know whether this is something someone has posted on social media they don't like. Again, those rules are always different for Gary Lineker than everyone else as well. Or an accusation, again, I have no idea, it's an accusation of misconduct in the office of any kind. We have no idea what this is, but it puts people under a big cloud. But it also raises a lot of questions about the BBC's ability to treat people equally and fairly.
Well, as you say, we have to wait and see what it is. I mean, for all we know, he might have just joined the Reform Party, and that would be a separate offence for the BBC. Yeah. But I think that's a very important thing to raise there, is that the standards by which people are held to at the BBC differ so wildly. It's not even a slight variation. It's that it genuinely, it could be anything, almost seemingly on a whim, based on who you are. For this to have happened in such an abrupt way, in a very sort of curt way, you have to assume, I think it's probably something quite serious. But I think that's the kind of thing. You never know, actually. You don't. And, the BBC is sort of scrambling around, I think, with its reputation over the Hugh Edwards thing in particular. It's entirely possible it could be an overcorrection.
Tim Davey, the Director General, leaves on Thursday. We've got a new guy coming in. They're going to, the last thing they want is this hanging over, don't they? Well, we'll let you know if we hear any developments. Put the feelers out. Anyway, let's go to my first guest at this hour now, Baroness Kate Hoey, independent peer and former Labour MP. A very good afternoon to you, Kate.
Good afternoon.
Lots to talk about. A lot of it, interestingly, very much in relation to where we are with the Iran conflict, because the impact back here at home, the impact is happening around the world in terms of that oil and gas spike. 10% more being spent on fuel by your white van man, by people just trying to go about and do their jobs. We've got a 6.2% increase in benefits being paid out, basically to allow for previous inflation, but MPs, by the way, they're getting an extra 3,300 cost of living handout. Your daily rate is going up a little bit as well. The two-child benefit cap is being scrapped, so that's an extra £3,500 to largely families who have either one or no one working in their families, but have got kids they can't afford. Meanwhile, it's people who go out to work every day, paying their taxes, who are getting hit the hardest. It doesn't feel fair, does it?
Well, I think probably, Julia, a lot of people waking up this morning listening to some of the stories would be thinking, why on earth am I getting up early and not going off to work? Because it doesn't seem as if work pays anymore, really, in the UK. And Labour seems to have an almost obsession about what they call the vulnerable. But the problem is the vulnerable to a lot of people are some people who are actually just not wanting to work. You know, there are so many people now who are not even trying to get a job. Yes, of course, there is a slightly higher unemployment, but, you know, there is absolutely no reason why anyone can't actually get a job. And I think people are fed up with it. And, you know, as for things like MPs and so on, I mean, I know the same story comes out every year. Well, it's an independent body that looks at it. But, you know, ordinary people working don't have independent bodies looking at. And even sometimes when they do, and they come out and say that a particular group of people should get more, the government don't go along with it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing, but also, you know, everyone's cost of living has gone up and will continue to go up. And there's a lot of, interesting to hear a lot of experts now talking about how we haven't even seen the worst of it yet. We've got that energy price cap protecting us on our energy bills, for the summer months, great, you know, till July. But at the end of the day, you know, the Strait of Hormuz being closed and all that oil and gas not getting out, the impact of that, because we've had, you know, currently we're consuming the oil and the gas that had already got out. The impact of months of that oil and gas not coming out if the conflict continues, and the destruction of a lot of the oil facilities and gas facilities, we're going to feel that hugely. The whole world is going to feel that, and there's nothing, frankly, right now we can do about that. But as you say, it's a feeling that, you know, it's the strivers, you know, it's alarm clock Britain who pay the brunt. They can't go to their boss and say, oh, everything's gone up in price, so can I have a pay rise, because the boss is going to say, yeah, all of my costs have gone up too. I've actually got less money rather than more. Meanwhile, let's give benefit claimants a bit more money. I'm sorry, but people are eventually just going to say enough already.
Well, I think that is what, and you know, I mean, all of us want to see a welfare state. We want to see people who are genuinely suffering, and we know there are, but there are an awful lot of other people who aren't. But of course, the real problem now is going to come with the oil shortage, perhaps, and petrol shortage, is that we're going to see rationing, and then rationing is such a rationing is such a. It sounds very, very right, you know. Everybody is treated the same. But if you're living in a rural area, or sort of back beyond, as I would say, you have to perhaps move around more than people living in.
You have to use a car. Well, I'm trying to think, how does fuel rationing impact somewhere like London, where most people could get on public transport? Well, they won't be impacted.
Exactly. So, I mean, the crucial thing has to be that the government could literally tomorrow change the tax situation on oil and diesel and all of that, and the green levy, which, you know, yes, in an ideal world it sounds brilliant, but we're not living in an ideal world. We're living in a now where you know, putting lots of investment and money into green energy, which we're not going to see the result of for many years, is just not seen as common sense.
Well, absolutely not. I mean, you know my views on that. Now, you're a former Labour MP. Do you think Labour backbenchers, they've forced enough U-turns over the last year and a half as it is, that they are going to be pushing for help, fuel duty and that? Because look, they're going to see what's happening in the polls, and they know what's, you know, we've got local elections coming up, we've got Scottish and Welsh elections. They're going to be feeling it.
I think there will be more and more Labour MPs speaking out. We've seen that already, the so-called Red Wall group saying, you know, that they want to see changes in that. But also, you know, it's not just, I think that as we get nearer to these elections in May, people are really going to realise that while they thought perhaps Starmer was going to get some extra kudos because of the way he handled Trump and the whole war situation, but that's not going to wash when they see their bills going up still and nothing being done by government.
It's always about, it's taxes. It's always about cost of living. That is always, it's the economy, stupid, as one of Clinton's aides so famously said all those years ago. How much damage do you think this Morgan Mcweeny story is doing to the government? Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, has said Morgan Mcweeny has to explain his extremely fishy phone theft. She was accused of being a bit of a conspiracy theorist in interviews on television yesterday, but I've not met anyone who doesn't think there's some dodginess going on. There's been a lot of stuff emerging that the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff, when he was Chief of Staff, had not just one but two personal phones and his work phone. And when this work phone got stolen, he reported it to the police. He didn't say who he was. He didn't say, well, as in his job, raising the security issue there in terms of the numbers that would be on that phone. And, of course, he gave the wrong address, the wrong street. The whole transcript looks very, very questionable at all. And there's a lot of question marks over the timing of this. It just happens conveniently to have his phone stolen around the time, or just they were having discussions about all the people working in Number 10 having to give up their phones to the possibility of this humble address, this vote in Parliament to get all the information about Lord Mandelson's appointment. That was already being talked about. It happened later, but it was already being talked about. How fishy do you think this is, and do you think we're going to get the answers?
I do think that this is actually more damaging than probably a lot of people in government thought it would be. People do realise that they are being almost conned on this. I think there's a feeling that particularly when we've seen one or two cabinet ministers actually lying, if you're allowed to use that word, over when his phone was stolen and then had to,
Well, we don't know. I mean, Steve Reid said it was stolen over a year ago, so long before all this happened. But that wasn't true. Now, we don't know if he'd been given different information. I have seen 3 or 4 different dates being given for when the phone was stolen. We know when it was reported stolen, because that's with the Met Police confirmed it was October the 20th last year. But that phone call. But the fact that any other dates have been given, either people are just being a bit casual with the facts, or they're making them up.
Oh, I think there is a feeling that it is being. There is a conspiracy. I do genuinely think there must be, but the problem is, Julia, over the years, it's not the initial problem. It's the way people cover up that in the end gets you and gets the government. And I think Keir Starmer is being really, really ridiculous if he is in any way involved with some of this trying to hide things. And if we don't see what was in Morgan Mcweeny's private phones, his messages, which he was clearly using, then how do we know just how deep that relationship was and how much the Prime Minister knew before he appointed him?
Because ultimately, this isn't about phone theft or what this guy who no one had ever heard of until a year ago, in fact, barely heard of now. It's about the misjudgment of the Prime Minister in appointing Peter Mandelson. And he claimed when he sacked him, if I'd known then what I know now, I would never have appointed him. And then we saw they're claiming the vetting and all of that. No, he made a terrible appointment. Peter Mandelson, I know, look, he's denied any wrongdoing, criminal wrongdoing, but what we know from the allegations that are now being investigated by the police, from what was in the Epstein files regarding passing on information to Jeffrey Epstein, that was clearly confidential information that he was getting as a government minister when he was business secretary under Gordon Brown, that he was a clear security risk. If those allegations are true, they've not been, charges haven't been brought. If those allegations are true, he was a massive security risk. What we knew about him in the public domain, he was a security risk. He was a questionable character. And yet he appointed him, and he's blaming anyone and everyone but himself. But this does come back to the PM, doesn't it?
It also comes down to a very simple fact to me, and I mentioned this in one of the things in the questions in the Lords. I mean, he knew when he appointed him that he had continued his relationship with Epstein. He knew that he'd stayed in his house in America when he was still in prison, for a child abuse.
And again, that was in a national newspaper, and it was in the vetting.
I just think that Steer Carmer thought that, he was going to that he was a clever guy, Mandelson. He was committed and loyal, and therefore he could go and do the business with Trump, and that it didn't really matter to him what happened in the past.
Is it a resigning matter for the Prime Minister, any of this? Do you think it will bring him down? Does it just contribute to the whole...
I just think it adds to the whole thing that he's not really a political Prime Minister. I mean, political in the sense that he's just not up to the job.
Yeah.
Simple.
Well, that's it. A lot of us would have been quite happy with a Prime Minister who didn't do politics and just was really good at quietly getting on with managing the economy and doing some sensible things.
Yeah,
I'd really prefer that, but he's not good at that either.
He's not good at that. And it sounds like he's probably not been, as you've said before, when I tried to say, well, maybe he was a good lawyer. I'm not even sure he was a good lawyer.
No. Absolutely not. Let me also ask you about the EU. Now, you are obviously a very, very prominent, and thank goodness you were, campaigner on the Leave front. We've got these negotiations going. Remember, Keir Starmer's got this big thing. He's going to reset with the European Union and basically try and take us back into the EU by the back door. We know that's what he's aiming to do. He's not a Democrat. He tried to undermine the biggest Democratic vote for anything this country has ever had back in 2016 to 2019 while he was Shadow Brexit Secretary. They're currently in negotiations over this new programme, this youth mobility scheme, which would basically allow under 30s in the EU to come here and our under 30s to travel there for a period of time. And we know that that's basically free movement by the back door, but it's largely young people who do that movement anyway. But the Keir Starmer's basically called for a cap on any programme, basically because he knows the British people are going to go, are you kidding me? Because you've got, 300 million people living in Europe and a large number of their youngsters who speak English as their second language, most of them coming to the UK, might be rather more in number than the Brits who are going to go over to Europe. He's asked for a cap. The EU has said they don't want a cap, but they will offer a break. So if it gets a little bit crazy and there are way too many people coming, then we could have an emergency break to stop it. But apparently, in order to break this deadlock, the EU basically are not backing down on that issue. But this is just free movement by the back door, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it shows that once again that Keir Starmer and I'm afraid the Labour government will do anything just to simply get back into favour with the EU.
Yeah.
And I have no confidence that they will stand up for our own country. And in the EU are very clever. They know how to negotiate and they will keep going. And, they're also wanting to try and get the students that come to universities in Britain to pay the same amount as a British student.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just shocking.
So so basically, we're already subsidising, as well as students getting into silly amounts of debt, the taxpayer subsidises a lot of those courses. Certainly any science course that costs way more than $9,500 to produce, we're subsidising. So now they want us to subsidise the students coming from France and Germany. I mean, it's properly
we have
mad.
The best university. I mean, the reality is there's no universities in Europe that have the same standard as our 3 or 4 or 5 very top universities.
Yep.
So everyone wants to come here, and yet we end up subsidizing them. And it's just not something that I think once people really understand what Starmer's trying to do, I just think, and we've already seen some of those, those Labour MPs in red wall seats asking him to sort of roll back a bit on the reset, because they know that this isn't popular. People haven't forgotten why they voted to leave the European Union. And, it hasn't been brilliantly handled. We all know that. But it could be. And that's why, I think we're going to see people rebel on this. Yeah. And hopefully Starmer will have to do a U-turn.
I hope so, except I think Labour backbenchers are fully signed up. They still think that everything would be great if we're in the EU. And what's so amazing is you look at the stats in France and Germany, the two powerhouse economies, and they are flatlining, same as us, because they follow a lot of it, not France, at least they've got the nuclear, following a lot of the same mad policies and welfare states and the like. I just want to ask you, because we're always told, Brexit hasn't worked out well, blah, blah. We had Gina Miller, there's a blast from the past, on the show last Thursday, just to liven us all up. Still a thing. Very lovely lady, but just completely wrong on this issue. But, I mean, there's a lot of fear that, we're looking at being taken back into the EU by the back door, even without a referendum. We've had Sadiq Khan, we've had other leading Labour figures say if they won the next election, Zach Polanski said, if Green Party, if there was a coalition, if they all had it in their manifestos, that we go back into the EU without having another referendum, that is a big fear. But do you think this would ever happen? Because fundamentally, the terms that the EU would offer to us would be backbreaking, wouldn't they? Yeah. To humiliate us.
Yeah, the first thing we'd have to do would be to join the euro, and I think that most people realise that is not something. If we were even to contemplate going back in now, it would be the end of what I would call the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We would be back in to a situation where we had no real control over very, very many aspects of our life. And I don't think people really want that. I mean, there is a feeling still that the referendum represented the voice of people who are never really heard in politics. And I think that we would see a backlash of huge enormity. And it would
I would certainly find time to go and find my pitchfork, that's for sure. Baroness Kate Hoey, independent peer, former Labour MP, thank you very much, leading light in the Leave campaign. Benedict Spence, it is fascinating. There's so many things that Labour Party are just failing to get done, which needs to get done. But they honestly do believe that the real thing they need to do while they're in power is to take us back into the EU by hook or by crook.
Listen, the sadist streak in me wants that to happen, because the meltdown that would happen when they did it and things got worse, and they would get worse. It would be glorious to look at from the outside. Obviously it wouldn't be glorious because the country would be even worse off, because all the things that Kate Hoey said would happen on the euro, on the appalling terms that would be put to us, that would all obviously happen.
There'd be no rebate like that.
But if you thought there was a meltdown when they lost the referendum, imagine if they win a new one, they get to go back in.
But this is the argument.
It's a disaster.
We're constantly told by Remainers.
What would they blame?
Their whole thing is that, like, people regret voting Brexit. Got poll after poll after poll. Has Brexit been a success? Well, only other than that we've got no one to blame other than our elected representatives when things go wrong. That was the only thing I voted for. Democratic accountability. That's my number one thing. You can't, if they can say, well, the EU made us do it, then we can't hold our own government accountable. When they're rubbish, we get to blame them because they're the ones being rubbish. That's the key thing to me. But again, we haven't capitalised it. And also, we left the EU around the time we had lockdown and then the Ukraine war. Oh, come on. It wasn't like there were wonderful opportunities at that time to get a lot of stuff done. We've been absolutely failed by the Tories and by Labour on this. But I would love to have another referendum. There's not a snowball's chance in hell that the British people are voting to go back into the EU when they have the proper debate and when you actually have the actual facts in front of you, the cost, the returning, going into the euro, having a currency which is basically based on Germany's industrial needs, France's agricultural needs, rather than Britain's, and the arrival of basically the whole of Eastern Europe. Although, to be honest with you, they're probably all going back the other way because the cost of living is so high in this country.
Although, once again, I will say there are an awful lot of people from certain parts of the Eastern Europe that do quite like the idea, who are here for entirely nefarious reasons. Once again, unrelated, Romania and Bulgaria are lovely places to go this time of year.
12:24 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to get to your calls. I've been asking you to get in touch about police failing to solve 92% of burglaries in Britain last year as Sun exclusive. Again, I'm amazed they solve 8%, to be honest with you. I thought it was lower than that. 1 in 100 only phone thefts are solved. Again, amazed it's that high. What is your reaction? We've spoken to quite a few police officers, actually, retired police officers who called in explaining about how you do actually tackle crime. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. But obviously you're always welcome to call in about any other topic as well. Give us a call. I'd love to get you on air. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon, welcome back to the show. Approaching 12:28. Let's get to your phone calls. And we've got another ex-copper. I'll tell you what, I'm feeling quite safe at the moment. It's due to all these ex-coppers looking after us. Peter is in Bedfordshire, and Peter, you wanted to talk to us about these burglary stats showing that 92% of burglaries are no longer solved, and in a third of the country across England and Wales, no burglaries at all are solved at all. How on earth can that happen?
Hi, Julia.
Hi.
Yeah, I was a police officer in the 2000s, and we used to routinely attend shoplifters.
Yeah.
Everybody had to detect at least 4 crimes a month. So a shoplifter was a nice
only
job
4.
Because, yeah, only 4. Well, that was the minimum. But if you did a shoplifter, the store would normally have all the evidence for you.
Yeah, but I know certainly in my local apologies, I'm trying to sneeze on air without making a sound. Apparently in my local high street, when I talk to shopkeepers, they say they've got the evidence, they've got the guys, they know where he lives, they've got everything, and the police don't even turn up then.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens where I live. I use my local constabulary's website. They do crime maps, and I went through for the whole year that was last fully recorded, and I counted up every crime in this village.
Yeah.
And there was 267 reported crimes or recorded crimes. So
in the village?
There was probably a lot more than that, but people don't report, do they?
Yeah.
Anyway, so and I'd advise people to do this because you can click on each one and find out how it was resolved, how it was resulted. So out of those 267 crimes, how many do you think resulted in someone being arrested,
7.
taken to court and convicted?
0.
0, yeah. Not one. 267 shoplifting.
But again, it's somewhere small. Like even the shoplifters. I live in central London, right? I recognise the local shoplifters.
Yeah. I mean, you can always tell. You can always tell.
No, but it's the same people. Everyone knows. The shopkeepers know. They actually pass the way. They've got a little system. They actually message each other, and they've got a little group saying, "Oh, John or Romany, whoever it is on the street right now. Close your doors," and they all close their doors and man their doors so they don't go and get robbed. I mean, it's just But how come the police can't arrest them? Although, is there an element where the police will say, "Well, we can arrest them and we can charge them," but nothing ever happens after that point. So they don't go to court. They don't get sentenced to a jail. What's the point?
I think the point is the public need to be reassured that they're being taken care of. I mean, if you had a business and X number of people come in every day and screwing it, what would you do?
Yeah, exactly.
What would you do? You'd invest in a baseball bat, wouldn't you?
I've got to be honest with you. I think we're getting to that territory where I'm thinking, were I on a jury in that scenario, I'm not sure I'd convict.
I've often said that, to my wife, who's very different opinion to me. I'd say I'd do it, and then I'd say I want a jury trial, and I guarantee you would not get convicted.
I would certainly, if there was a lot of shit. I mean, again, I'm not endorsing people breaking the law, but I can understand why people would say, at some point, I've got to be able to stand up. And then people say, "Oh, it's just property." It's not. It's people's livelihoods.
Of course it is. And the point about the burglary is that, if Billy Burglar's been in your house, you would not feel safe again.
Yeah.
You would not feel safe again. Yeah. I mean,
and are most of these burglaries? I mean, again, we often hear it's acquisitive. You have your garden gate shut, have your window locks because it's people just sort of trying on the off chance. Are these drug addicts? It's just acquisitive crime? Is it organised? Is it gangs? What is it?
I think it is drugs. I mean, I worked in the Luton was my town that I worked in. And we knew who all the burglars were. We knew them all.
Same one. It's him again. Yeah, in the account. Yeah. But this is the thing. And then people say, but prison doesn't work because they reoffend. No, because they've been caught. They've been convicted of 40. They've done 400. Of course they're going to reoffend. But the point is, when they're behind bars, they're not able to break into someone's home and steal their stuff and trash their home.
That's right.
Peter.
That's right. Prison does work because whilst they're in there, they're not offending.
Absolutely. Oh, really good to talk to you, Peter. Thank you very much. See, I'd feel reassured having Peter walking the beat round my way.
The thing is, actually, excuse me, if you had most of the police officers in this country who actually go into the force to try and solve crime, in charge of actually setting the guidelines,
it would be fine.
It would be so much easier. Police officers do not often, as a rule, join the police to be pen pushers and to not do anything. Exactly. They join it for a different reason.
Exactly. Let's go to Nigel. He's on the line in London. Nigel, you want to talk about something completely different, and that is this mad net zero policy that is killing our economy.
Absolutely. I think in relation to the fuel, Julia, is at the moment, if you're a Costco member, you can pay $137.9 a litre for unleaded.
Yeah.
So I believe there's a definite element of profiteering because petrol companies have reserves. The other point is...
No, can I just say, there is no evidence of profiteering, right? It depends when they bought their petrol.
Well, OK, but if they can't get petrol at the moment, they must have stocks of petrol.
Yeah, but it depends what price they bought it at and when they got it and,
Well, that's maybe, but Costco's 137.9. The other thing is that fuel duty is 78p plus VAT per litre. Per litre. Why can't this government reduce it by 50p to help businesses and the 999 emergency services? And furthermore, why hasn't this government and previous government ensured this country has reserves of fuel to keep this country going? If not, it's going to collapse.
Yeah, it's absolutely blind. But we were talking about on the show on Thursday, it blew my mind that in Europe, France and Germany, they basically got sort of 100 days worth of gas storage and actually full. We've got 2 weeks of gas storage. We destroyed a load of it a few years back. Got 2 weeks worth, but we have only got a couple of days worth of actual gas stored in it. Mind-blowing. I mean, this is irresponsible beyond belief. Nigel, thank you for that call. 12:34 is the time. We're going to take a break. We're going to be talking to the brilliant Andrew Fox of the Henry Jackson Society, former major in the Parachute Regiment, about what is going on with Iran, what do we think is going to happen next. We're also going to be talking about this new, basically, expanding of the labour equality law, which could mean that, basically, you might be put to the back of the queue if you're waiting for an NHS operation, if you're, I don't know, white, straight, got a job, paying taxes, that sort of thing. Don't take my word for it. It's in the law. We'll talk about that very soon. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:37 is the time. This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's turn our attention to what the hell is going on when it comes to the Iran conflict. Let's talk to Andrew Fox. He's a Senior Associate Fellow at the Henry Jackson Society. He's also former Major in the Parachute Regiment. Very good afternoon to you.
Hi, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Well, I mean, because it's another hour in the day, there's another message from Donald Trump today, his latest. He has put out one of his Truth Social posts saying the United States of America is in serious discussions with it, there's a lot of capitals, with a new and more reasonable regime to end our military operations in Iran. He says great progress has been made, but if for any reason a deal is not shortly reached, which it probably will be, and if the Hormuz Strait is not immediately open for business, we will conclude our lovely his stay in Iran by blowing up and completely obliterating all of their electric generating plants, oil wells and Karg Island, and possibly all desalination plants, ! Which we have purposefully not yet touched. This, he says, will be in retribution for our many soldiers and others that Iran has butchered and killed over the old regime's 47-year reign of terror. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That's quite a threat. Does he mean it?
Well, I think we're seeing a strategy of deliberate chaos here. As Israel and America continue bombing Iranian targets, we're getting from the White House a raft of counter indications. So whilst he talks about a deal being signed, we also see thousands of soldiers being put into the Gulf, ready for ground operations if needed. So I think it's a deliberate strategy to keep the regime on their toes, keep the world guessing about what Trump is planning, but also trying to maintain some kind of stability in the oil markets, which are clearly suffering right now.
Well, I'm not sure how that's going to maintain stability in the oil markets. Now, there's no question that we've got the US Marines. I mean, there's 50,000 American troops in the region. Bearing in mind, the Iraq invasion was 150,000. Iran is about 3 or 4, 5 times the size. I mean, and much more of a well, militarized state. So that's not. We're not talking about an invasion of Iran. We're talking about Karg Island, crucially, not at the Strait of Hormuz, up the Gulf, and it's basically where 90% of Iranian oil is basically sent out to the world. Is it conceivable that he will send the Marines in to seize that island? Is it possible?
It is possible. It's not a job that I think they'll enjoy. It certainly puts them within range of the Iranian mainland and any missiles or drones they might have there. And to put this in context, an FPV drone, the good quality ones, have a range of 30 to 50 kilometers. That's clearly a distance that is reachable from the coastline. Ukraine is making 10,000 of those drones a month. And of course, Iran has had nearly a month at least to be manufacturing these things. They're not hard to do. Yeah. I think if they do seize Karg Island, we might find out very quickly just how degraded Iran is and just how good American anti-drone defences are, and see if they have learned anything from Ukraine, because that would put a lot of Marines in a very vulnerable position if they haven't done that.
And this is the thing, isn't it? Because you've got an Iranian regime run by religious fundamentalists who are waiting for their paradise and their 72 virgins. Although I do find generally the leadership of these organisations tend to be less happy about dying than the young men they send out as fodder. But they don't care two hoots about their own people. They happily slaughtered 30 to 40,000 of their young people back in January. They don't care about them. But whether you've elected Donald Trump or not, but democratically elected presidents do have to care, as democratically elected prime ministers in this country have to care about the welfare of their troops. The American people have said again and again, we don't want to be involved in wars on the other side of the world. We don't want to be involved in the Middle East. Not our problem. They certainly don't want body bags coming back en masse. That is what could be in prospect if there was an attack to seize Karg Island and then a counterattack. That is a realistic problem. That is election suicide for the president, isn't it, with the midterm elections coming up in November?
I'd suggest so. I mean, I suspect the Republicans are in real trouble with the midterms, whatever happens. The polling for Trump and the Republicans is pretty poor right now. But look, I think the Americans are looking for an off-ramp here, and I can see really 4 options going forward. Continue what you're doing, escalate by putting ground troops on, come to a deal with the Iranian regime, or stop unilaterally. There's not really any other options on the table here.
And declare a victory. I mean, Donald Trump is not beyond saying, right, we've achieved what he keeps saying they've had regime change. They haven't. I mean, they've got a new Ayatollah, but they haven't got regime change as such, have they? But he's quite capable of just announcing it and leaving, isn't he? But does that solve anything in the Middle East? Because it's interesting to see how the Arab states have come alongside America and Israel and been supportive of their war aims. And even if he wants to end the war, that doesn't mean Iran is going to stop opening up the Strait of Hormuz, given that's their leeway to punish the world for this. But also, does it mean that Israel will stop? Because Israel's got rather different war aims, perhaps more existential war aims for Israel in terms of the threat that Iran poses to them.
Well, exactly. And I think to an extent, Jerusalem is going to have to go along with what Washington tells them to do. If Trump says stop, then they stop. And if you think back to the end of the 12-day war, when Israel wanted to do another bombing raid, and Trump made that famous "they don't know what they're effing doing" statement, I think Washington have certainly the final say in this. But I think from the Iranian regime perspective, we have to remember that this is a religious mission for them.
Yeah.
It's eschatological, if you will. They believe the Mahdi will come back once Iran or somebody has destroyed Israel and America, the little and the big Satans. And really, they expect to see this level of chaos. They will see this as part of the religious journey, is the pain that they will be taking from the Satans.
And this is the difficulty.
Looking at the world.
When you say the strategy of deliberate, I mean, who knows? It's chaos. Is it deliberate? Is it a strategy? Does Donald Trump understand? I mean, I like to think, your Marco Rubios, know what they're doing, and the Pentagon knows what it's doing. But is anyone telling Trump, or is he just listening to the last person in the room? And there is that concern about him. He's done a brilliant job. He did a brilliant job with Israel and Gaza, I think, and more credit to him on that. But, I mean, don't trust him an inch when it comes to Russia and Ukraine. And on this, is it a strategy of deliberate chaos? And can you negotiate in this way by putting out these choices like, look, do this, agree to this deal, or we're going to destroy your lifeline, or your entire economic base and bring an uprising? Because people will, there's uprisings over political chaos, and there's uprisings because people literally have no water to drink and no food to eat. And that's a different level of political turmoil for these people in Iran. But if you're dealing with religious fundamentalists, they don't think in the way we would think rational. They think they're thinking rationally, but they're not rational in what we would regard as rational in terms of wanting to stay alive. Because if they don't think the same way as us, you can't negotiate with them in the same way.
And that's the really key problem that we've seen in Gaza. Hamas just wouldn't quit. They were defeated militarily by any metric. If that had been a Western army, they'd have been waving a white flag and signing surrender documents. Unfortunately, they don't see it that way. We're seeing it again now in Lebanon with Hezbollah, who, again, no matter how much of a beating they take from the IDF, keep just rebuilding and trying to come back. And we're seeing it now on a scale of 90 million people with Iran, where the regime is happy to keep taking these blows, absorbing it, and they will see any form of survival as a victory. That's how Hamas have framed it in Gaza, and that's how Tehran will frame it. And when it comes to bombing desalination plants, uprisings don't happen on demand. The uprisings we saw in December and January this year were 6 months after the 12-day war, when the regime was horrendously weakened. So these things happen organically. They don't happen on demand.
And a lot of that was about prices. A lot of it was about the fact that, the inflation had got up to some ridiculous percentage point where it was non-functioning.
Yeah, and my final point, I think, would be that if you destroy the power plants and desalination facilities for 90 million people, no matter what happens subsequently, if they uprise and they overthrow the regime, they're still in real trouble. You've still...
That would be a war crime,
a drought. Wouldn't it? I think it would be, yes. I mean, you have to justify any strike through military necessity. And the effects of your strike, the impact cannot be disproportionate to the military advantage achieved. I would suggest that creating a drought for 90 million people is not militarily justified.
Yeah, and bearing in mind, again, we're not talking about a bit of extra water, we're talking, and again, that's something that Iran had been clearly, obviously threatening to Middle Eastern countries as well, deliberately sending bombs very close to desalination plants. 60 to 90% of water in the Middle East comes from desalinated seawater. You mentioned Lebanon. I wanted to bring on to that because you and I have discussed so many times the coverage in the British and other media of the war in Gaza and the very one-sided coverage. Seeing it again in Lebanon, this extraordinary coverage where, why on earth has Israel started bombing Lebanon? Isn't it awful? These poor civilians and these journalists and these doctors who are being killed. Why are they bombing residential buildings? Where's this come from? Completely ignoring that the Hezbollah is a huge, highly armed army, basically bigger than the Lebanese army and police force, basically in the whole of Lebanon, but particularly in the south, that has been bombing missile attacks on Israeli people for quite a few years now, and that they are completely embedded in local civilian architecture, aren't they? I mean, the coverage is exactly the same as Gaza. Like, this is an utter mystery. Where has this come out of the blue? Why is Israel such a warmongering country?
Well, we saw Alex Crawford at Sky yesterday, of course, reporting from the funeral of a Hezbollah journalist who worked for Hezbollah's radio station, saying that the Israelis couldn't prove his links to Hezbollah as people were waving Hezbollah flags in the background and chanting "Death to America." This isn't.
There are clues. For a very, very good war reporter, there's quite a lot of reporters I'm seeing right now who are hugely admired over the years, seem to be utterly blinded on this conflict.
Yeah, and look, I went to a Hezbollah tunnel back in November 24.
Yep.
The entrance was in a graveyard. It was surrounded by civilian infrastructure and housing, and it ran underneath a hill that sat over this village, and it was 500 meters away from a UNIFIL base. This is not, again, an unknown factor that Hezbollah build in people's houses. And I've spoken to IDF soldiers, and they told me that there were certain villages they went to in that part of southern Lebanon, and every single house had weapon stores and tunnel entrances. It's just like Gaza all over again, except it's dug into chalk rock and therefore much, much harder to deal with. And Israel's doing what it has to do to protect the people in those northern towns and villages.
What would we be doing if a terrorist army in the neighbouring country was firing missiles on our people? What do we think we would be doing? Andrew Fox, always so good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Benedict Spencer's response to that?
I'm just perpetually amazed at the hilarious situation of Hezbollah, which has been just battered over and over again, thinking that now this time this will be different. This time we'll go in and everything will be fine. No, like everything that is visited upon southern Lebanon was entirely avoidable. They didn't have to do this. This didn't have to be their fight. The irony, of course, is Hassan Nasrallah, all the way back at the start of the Gaza conflict, didn't want it to be the fight because he knew they'd take a battering, but he felt drawn in, he felt like he had to, and now they are reaping their rewards.
Yeah, I mean, again, it would be laughable if it wasn't so serious and people weren't dying. Anyway, right now, just before we go to a break, we're giving you the chance to win a life-changing £20,000, completely tax-free here on Talk. That's £20,000 straight into your bank account. Spend it, save it, splash it. It's entirely up to you. Here's how you could be in with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 9th of April 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
A very good luck with that. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:52 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Benedict Spence still with me. And we're going to be talking right now about equality laws. Now, I was absolutely amazed to discover this is already in law, but under the Equality Act, apparently, we're under a system where basically there is a job from the government guidance which tells public bodies, public sector bodies, they have a socio-economic duty imposed on them, means that all decisions they make must strive to reduce inequality in society, their socio-economic duty. Now, this is already in law, but is actually being drawn up as statutory guidance by this current government, and what critics are basically calling a war on the middle class, and what the Tories have called an imposition of socialism on Britain. So what does it actually mean? Let's talk to Maxwell Marlowe. He's Director of Public Affairs at the free market think tank, the Adam Smith Institute. Afternoon to you, Maxwell.
Afternoon, Julia. How are you?
Very well indeed. This sounds very, innocuous, doesn't it? Basically, socio-economic duty. But in practice, this could basically mean prioritising tax-funded public services like health, housing, whatever, but prioritising people who are considered to be socioeconomically deprived or vulnerable in some way. That could conceivably mean that if you're on benefits or you're an ethnic minority or maybe trans or gay, that you would count as being vulnerable and therefore you would be prioritised for NHS operation over someone who was, say, white, straight and in a job. Is that what this could mean?
It could mean that. It could also mean, as you're signing in to, you're kind of waiting for that 9 o'clock, phone call for your GP in the queue. They could ask you for your income. What say if you're, working really hard as a, young consultant, for example, in the city, and you're feeling unwell. Sorry, sir, you earn too much money. You'll have to go somewhere else. Despite all of the tax you're paying, to unlock that service.
We'll see you after we've seen all the people on benefits. It is quite an extraordinary idea because, one of the things that people, who do still support the NHS is, well, it's free at the point of need and it doesn't care whether you're a millionaire, a billionaire or living on the street. You should, in theory, you should get the same care. But this is basically going to say, no, you don't need it as much as this person needs it, not because of your medical need, but because of your social economic position.
Exactly. And, it's actually quite unpopular. I'll be honest with you here, Julia. So we did some polling. I was writing a paper. We worked with a company called JL Partners to do a bit of polling, around, should millionaires and billionaires have access to the NHS? And actually, well, this is the thing. The public actually went, well, yeah, they paid for it. Yeah, so of course they should. It's ludicrous they shouldn't. So I think this could actually be quite unpopular. It could also have human rights implications, of course, Julia. Imagine depriving someone of publicly funded services, but because of these needs, we wouldn't have it the other way, would we? We wouldn't say, oh, because you're from an ethnic minority, you're not allowed to access these public services. That'd be an outrage.
But it is outrage. Because it's not just school. It'd be like, so hospitals. It could be in GP appointments. It could be school places. It could be whether the police investigate your crime or not. And this is Equality Act of 2010, and it's a clause requiring public bodies to, quote, have due regard to the desirability of exercising their functions in a way that is designed to reduce the inequalities of outcome which result from socio-economic disadvantage. Now, this is the key. This is where people are saying that this is about, socialism. Mm-hmm. Inequality it can be very, very unfair if it's, through no fault of your own. But that's about equality of opportunity, isn't it? You want every kid to get a good start in life with good education and, decent housing and things like that. But inequalities of outcome, well, you send two people, one person works really hard and can buy a house and buy a car and do well in life. One person doesn't bother doing anything. Well, their outcomes are unequal. So what? Should we take something from the person who's worked hard and give it to the other person to make them equal? Inequality of outcome is socialism.
Definitionally. This is what happens in the Soviet Union. It's what happened under Maoist China. So what happens in North Korea. As long as you're not a member of the party, of course, Julia, because then things end a little bit more differently. But you're right. This is what Friedrich Hayek, the Nobel Prize-winning economist, called the road to serfdom back in the 1940s. And he was, I think, proved right, because this is the sort of thing that, despite it being passed by Labour, then 14 years of Conservative government, why bother taking it out of the law? Theresa May did change some of the wording, but the Tories never bothered to remove it from the statute book. So we've got to go through this whole rigmarole again. I know it's absolutely crazy. But I will say, Julia, for minorities like the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, the police aren't going to investigate the crime anyway, are they? So it's all of this rather weird nonsense. But I'll end on this point really, which is that actually this guidance has worked to reduce inequality, because the UK has been in such a low growth state and such a high tax state that actually income inequality has basically been falling since the 1990s. So well done, the government. Thank you
we can all get poorer and then we'll all be more equal and we'll all be happy, which is basically what socialism does, isn't it? Apart from the happy bit. Mark Small-Marlowe, thank you very much, Director of Public Affairs at Adam Smith Institute. I mean, it's a complicated thing, this, Benedict, and again, the writing of this clause is typical sort of, public body speak. But this is just basically, it's about sort of, it's social engineering, isn't it?
It is, and you know that they're up to something nefarious, because if they weren't, it would just be what we all believe the NHS and every other public service to be, which is that it's an equal opportunities thing. That is true equality, but this is not really about equality at all. It's about trying to re-engineer, as you say,
everything every single inequality in the world must be down to some, racism, sexism.
Waking up before 9 a.m, that sort of thing. To be fair, I don't always do that. So,
he does not always do that.
He does not always do that.
Timekeeping is not one of his.
And that's why you feel very bitterly that this is very unfair and that I should be put at the bottom of the queue, because I don't do this.
He is at the bottom of the queue for someone getting tea. Anyway, so he's not at the bottom of the queue. Delighted to say he's here now. Ian Collins.
Hey, all happening. Thanks very much. Good night. Well, I was trying to make sense of your last...
What's going to happen.
What a show it's going to be.
It's going to be amazing. I was trying to make sense of your last conversation, because obviously I just walked in the middle of it, so I wasn't quite sure what... Is this about institutions having a conscience and all that?
No, but actually being required by law to actually sort of basically sort of socially equal outcomes. But that would mean giving more healthcare treatment or tending to more crimes if they're committed against people who are poor or vulnerable or counted as being vulnerable.
But this is